One Ronin is secretly the strongest, most talented student at the academy, but nobody knows it. Not a soul, that is why they constantly underestimate him. Crossing his path, easily the worst mistake anyone could ever make. The lightest penalty is losing an ear. His hidden strength is a total secret. A dark truth so deep that literally nobody in this world could ever possibly imagine. Years ago, God turned against humanity, unleashing angels to erase them all. During the final war, the angels fell, yet only Ronin survived. Only him, a grown man left completely alone, surrounded by the ash of his world. Even the girl he loved, a legendary warrior, died in the slaughter. But that victory, nothing but a lie, a cruel illusion. The true angels were just watching, waiting to strike the final blow. Every death was pointless, all of humanity was doomed to lose. And Ronin simply lacked the proper training as a child to rewrite their fate. Accepting his end, he shared one final kiss with his dying beloved. Then reality broke. Instead of dying, Ronin suddenly wakes up. He is back 10 years in the past, once again a poor, powerless young boy. But this time, he carries the overwhelming knowledge and skill of his future. A massive godlike advantage that absolutely nobody in his class can suspect. He still remembers the bloodbath that decided the fate of humanity. He won the war, but the pouring rain hid his tears. It was a bitter victory. Far too many lifeless bodies littered the cold mud. Every single one of them was a comrade he deeply respected. As he mourns his fallen allies, the chilling voice of an angel calls him. Fueled by absolute rage, Ronin snaps violently at the dying creature. He spits that all of its angelic brethren are already dead or sealed. "That is what you get for underestimating humanity," he yells. The angel just smiles, knowing they both paid a heavy price. The human armies are decimated, warriors like Ronin are extinct. Ronin fires back, asking what that matters since the angels still lost. The demon-faced angel laughs. What a tragedy, it tells him. If only those humans had not looked down on you back then. With proper training, you could have easily wiped all of us out together. Don't you regret saving the fools who humiliated you? Ronin just smiles bitterly, admitting his life was garbage before telling the beast to die. Sending the monster to hell, Ronin begins walking across the silent, blood-soaked battlefield. He stares at the dead, memories of the conflict pulsing in his mind. He wonders how those giants ignored attacks from the world's elite, yet crumbled so easily to his sword without him using any mana. Suddenly, a familiar female voice cuts through his heavy grief, calling his name. Stumbling, Ronin follows the weak sound directly toward the ruins. It is Adashan, the beautiful but heavily wounded commander of the humans. Even now, he cannot resist teasing her about her battered state. She smiles weakly, asking if a mere corporal like him is really the legendary Ronin. Looking closely at his injuries, she notes he looks just as terrible as she does. She looks at him desperately, asking if Ayat managed to survive the battle. The giant general was dead, and Ronin confirmed he killed that monster himself. Hearing those words, Adashan's expression shifted. It was like she was hanging on just to hear how this battle ended. Even in the pouring rain, her tears were clear as day. She thanked Ronin for everything he had done. Speechless, he stayed quiet for a long moment, then finally spoke up. "If you are truly grateful, grant me one wish: treat those poor soldiers better. Let them be treated like everyone else." Adashan took a slow, deep breath. She told him it would be better if he made that happen himself. Because she did not know if she would survive, Ronin let out a tired laugh. It nearly choked him. How on earth was he somehow more alive than her? Any minute now, he would be dead too. They just sat there, talking for ages. They talked until Adashan asked what he would do if he survived. Ronin smiled weakly. He had endless dreams, but there was only one thing he could really think of right now. His only wish was to know what he could have done better in this war. Those thoughts haunted him because the giant general's final words still tormented his mind. And most of all, because his sister had always wished to see him go there. In a low, heavy voice, Ronin muttered that he would see his family very soon. Even completely exhausted, Adashin tried to give him hope, whispering that he would live. But before she could finish her sentence, a single raindrop broke the sudden silence. The pouring rain abruptly stopped, and a massive tremor shook the earth beneath them. Any remaining peace was shattered. Ronin felt a terrible dread and quickly understood why. An angel appeared right before him, boasting so many wings it looked almost ridiculous. Behind this strange entity, a massive, terrifying legion of soldiers began to form. Hundreds of angels stood perfectly ready, completely untouched by the brutal fighting before. Exhausted and in pure shock, where did these bastards even come from? Who were they? Adashin could not believe her eyes. Were they not finished? Weren't those three giants the end? She could not save this world a third time. There was only one final chance left, but she could not find a way. Lost in her desperate thoughts, Adashin barely noticed when Ronin shouted her name. Shouting for his commander, he roared for her to snap out of it and use her telekinesis. If she threw him high into the air, he could still fight, but she had no hope left. Yet there was Ronin, standing tall and ready to face the absolute impossible. Even in this unwinnable situation, he did not waver. Even if he died, he would never stop. Ronin roared with steady resolve, determined to take down as many monsters as possible. All he wanted was to clear the path for the next humans to rise. Adashin froze, a strange feeling blooming deep inside her. This soldier was too great. If it were him, surely he would be far more capable of saving this world. She begged Ronin to look at her, Corporal Ronin, who had survived absolute hell. Fighter of the most insane war imaginable, he suddenly felt a massive rush of adrenaline flooded him when Adashin pulled him close and suddenly kissed him. Mid-kiss, something shifted between them. She passed a glowing blue sphere into his mouth. Perhaps she did it to trick their enemies so they would not notice a thing. Ronin had no idea what it was, nor what Adashin whispered in his ear. It is a secret the story is not ready to reveal just yet. But hold on, everything was about to change. Ronin was completely lost. Adashin simply smiled in that final moment, asking him to tell her if they ever met again. Not to do anything stupid and to just become a tailor instead. Then, the many-winged angel struck. And that was how both of them met their tragic end, or rather how. The most incredible story began. Ronin woke up with a sudden start. Adrenaline pumping, screaming his commander's name. Had it all been just a dream, a bizarre nightmare? It made no sense. But wait, he was actually back home. Nimbute, beautiful, peaceful, and real. He had actually returned to the past, and this was Day 1, sitting under a tree, her final words echoed in his mind. That kiss, that token she gave him, a temporal return pill she had explained its power. It was the exact secret behind her legendary rise from a humble recruit to commander. 4 charges, only 4, and 3 were already gone. This was her final chance, yet she gave it to him. She believed that he was the only one who could defeat the giants, the only one who could stop the end of the world. She wanted him to grow stronger, knowing he desired it too. To truly unlock his potential, she urged him to attend Philian Academy. There they would forge him into the hero the world needed. He remembered her promise that they would meet again, and her plea for him not to do anything reckless and just live as a peaceful tailor. She had done unbelievable things, but nothing like this. Now, he began striking the tree frantically, testing if this was all a dream. But even if he truly returned, what could he accomplish alone? Picking up a wooden stick, he glared at the tree and swore he would succeed. He dashed off with it, desperate to see his older sister clutching the branch. He sprinted through the quiet town. He kept thinking that if this regression was real, then just ahead, he suddenly heard a loud commotion. Some local thugs were hanging a helpless boy. This was getting ugly fast. Seeing that, he wondered why they were dangling the child upside down. To think those bastards had not changed at all. Looking closer, it was actually magic holding him, not a rope. an incredibly rare mage like this was a precious asset. On any battlefield, having a talent like that in a tiny rural town was impossible. Meanwhile, the young wizard did not know how long he could keep holding the spell before something terrible happened to the helpless kid, dangling upside down. The poor boy begged them to let him go. He cried that he had no money left because of his mother's expensive medicine, but the thug just sneered, asking why he even cared about her. Annoyed by the lack of cash, the brute violently slapped the boy. Then the bully turned his glare back to the trembling young wizard, demanding they hoist the screaming kid even higher up into the tree. But the young wizard protested, pleading that he could not lift him any higher. If his magic slipped, the kid would plunge to his death. The angry thug glared at him, barking to shut up and keep lifting the kid. Deep despair washed over the young wizard, hating how he ended up in this situation. He knew it was wrong to torture someone with magic. Simply wishing to prove his rare talent, he was now completely trapped. Paralyzed with fear, yet he knew he had to stand up to them. Gaining his courage, he softly begged them to please stop, but right then, Ronin stepped in, cracking a sturdy wooden stick right over her head. The spell broke instantly, dropping the trapped boy to the ground. Meanwhile, the furious bully barked in confusion, charging at the girl to demand if she would really dare stop. Ronin stepped in between, telling her to completely ignore a piece of trash like that. Instead, he gently urged the girl to look up and speak to him directly. Though she was absolutely terrified, he kept his voice calm and serious. He simply wanted to know where she had managed to learn her telekinetic magic. She quietly admitted buying a cheap grimoire from some passing merchant. Ronin was stunned that she could display such talent with just a basic spellbook. He wanted to test her limits, but a sudden, familiar sound cut his thoughts short. The ring of steel echoed as the angry bully yelled at Ronin for ignoring him. Charging forward, the brute swore to put an end to what he called cheap lies. Yet Ronin only focused on the high quality of the sword, wondering where they got it. He effortlessly dodged the strike, leaving the bully utterly baffled by his quick movements. Ronin smiled inwardly, realizing that despite his younger body, his core remained the same. His battle instincts were still those of a highly trained, seasoned soldier. The furious bully sneered, asking if he truly thought luck would save him. He threatened to break Ronin's limbs so he could never lift a finger again. Seeing the quiet boy stand still, the bully demanded he drop to his knees. He kept taunting Ronin, declaring that after his death, his sister would be taken. He promised to claim his sister next. That trashy threat instantly caught Ronin's full attention. Blinded by sudden rage, the boy moved to deliver a brutal lesson. In a clean stroke, the bully's ear was severed, sending his sword clattering to the dirt. He clutched the bleeding side of his head, screaming in absolute, agonizing pain. Ronin had zero tolerance for anyone making disgusting jokes about his family. Standing over him, he coldly asked if he wanted a second round. The arrogant attacker was now reduced to a pathetic, trembling mess on the ground. His lackeys watched in absolute horror, unable to comprehend a stick doing such damage. Glaring at the remaining thugs, Ronin asked if they enjoyed watching their boss break. He ordered them to beat it, demanding they drag their bleeding leader away. But first, they had to drop the stolen cash, plus interest for ruining his day. Terrified, they paid up immediately. Ronin then tossed the pouch to the tied-up victim. Stunned, the boy looked at the heavy bag, asking if this was really all for him. Ronin shrugged, explaining that the high-quality sword was all he really cared about. The boy nodded in deep gratitude before quietly suggesting they all head back home. Filled with regret, Asel kept her head low, apologizing to them both in a soft voice. She knew helping the bullies was wrong, but fear had completely paralyzed her. Sobbing heavily, she repeated how sorry she was, taking full blame for the mess. Her tears reminded the boy of when Hans first brought her to their home. Back then, he had wondered if she was carrying the same painful burdens. Gently resting a hand on her shoulder, he urged Asel to stop crying. With a warm smile, he assured her that nobody blamed her for what happened. With his recovered belongings secured, the grateful boy prepared to take his leave. After saying their quiet farewells, Ronin and Asel watched him walk away. Turning to the girl, Ronin smiled, asking if she recalled his promise from earlier. He had something to settle, so he told Asel they would meet again in 4 days. He had some personal business to handle, promising they would meet again once the light returned to the sky, asking Asel if she knew what would happen if she failed to show up before quickly running off. Asel thought he was acting far more bizarre than usual. Soon, Ronin stood outside a small cabin deep in the forest, waiting at the door with flowers. He remembered how much his sister adored them, picking every single bloom he could find. He almost threw them away in embarrassment, but it was too late. The door opened. The sweet voice inside wondered who was out there. As he stood facing away, she gently asked if it was Ronin. He spun around quickly to look at her, asking if he had finally returned. She smiled warmly, thrilled that he was so early. He softly confirmed he was back. Becoming incredibly emotional, she admitted she never thought she would survive to receive flowers from her brother. She was overjoyed, and he felt deeply relieved that she loved them. She smiled, calling her brother incredibly sweet, and offering him some more soup, but he warmly insisted he was already full. The gently asked how old she would turn this year. She replied 22, wondering why. He silently calculated that if she was 22, only 10 years remained before those winged giants would invade their world again. His sister gently placed her hand on Ronin's forehead. Fearing he had a fever, he looked at her, remembering how incredibly kind she always was, wishing this peaceful moment could last forever. But in 10 years, to protect both her and the entire world, he knew he had to speak up. He revealed his sudden decision to enter the academy, catching her completely off guard. Quickly, she grew overwhelmingly happy and tearful, desperately asking if she had heard him correctly, if he truly wanted to attend. Suddenly, she dashed off, claiming there was no time for hesitation. Gathering his things, she whispered that she always knew this day would come. He was incredibly bright, ensuring his success. Heaving a massive iron cauldron onto the floor, she set it down with immense effort, proudly declaring it as her gift. When he looked inside, he gasped. The giant pot was literally overflowing with money. Stunned, he asked how she had saved it all. She admitted it was for him, fearing he might abandon his dreams over tuition fees, wanting to cover the costs instantly. While he deeply treasured her gift, he insisted she keep the savings. After all, his real goal was to enter the prestigious Imperial Filian Academy. She gasped in absolute shock. First, he refused to attend any school, and now he wanted the absolute finest one on earth. This legendary Imperial Filian Academy truly resembled a massive, ancient castle, home to the most elite instructors on the entire continent. Ronin knew its elite graduates had been incredibly vital during the war, but with such absurdly brutal entry requirements and massive tuition fees, its legendary status was also a major obstacle. Yet he completely misjudged her reaction, as his sister became even more overjoyed. Now he just had to show her top-tier results. Soon, Ronin stood at the meeting spot, waiting for Asel. She grumbled that she only showed up because he would have annoyed her forever otherwise. He smirked, warning her of a long night as he had an intriguing little test to run on her. Confused, Asel asked what he meant, but he casually dismissed her worries. Next, he asked her to use telekinesis on him, launching him as high as she possibly could. Finding the request incredibly bizarre, she hesitated, demanding to know why on earth he wanted to do that. He can't believe she'd do this. He promises her he won't die. Telling her not to fear, Asel warns him before casting her magic. He rises off the dirt, high into the air. Honestly, it's surprisingly smooth. Way better than he ever expected. This whole floating thing is pretty neat. Sure, it's a bit shaky, but the overall sensation feels incredibly familiar. This is the exact feeling that let him clash evenly with that Hayut. Telekinesis, a legendary, ultra-rare talent, even among elite magic wielders in this land. And out here, Ronin knows Asel's rare gift makes her their key player. But keeping him airborne is heavy work. She's already starting to struggle badly. She weakly asks if she can drop him yet, but he insists on staying up. He claims he'll land on his own. The poor girl is left completely baffled. Tightening his grip, Ronin takes a sudden, sharp swing directly at the wind. He literally slices straight through the mana. Boom, he lands perfectly on his feet. When she asks what he just did, he shrugs, just a little acrobatics. He tells her to drop it. Truth is, he barely understands it himself. Figuring out the nature of this bizarre skill is now his top priority. Even before solving why his blade is the only weapon that harms giants. He can dissect that mystery later. For now, he has other plans. Besides, Asel just passed his little trial. This is where her legend starts. This is the very first page of the Empire's greatest heroic tale. Later, walking down a forest path, a nervous Asel asks if he's serious. Are they really going to enroll together at the famous Fian Academy? He sighs. He tells her she heard right. Why does she keep asking? Asel admits she gets why a natural combat genius like him wants in. But her, she feels completely useless, possessing absolutely zero physical skills or talent. She calls herself a shy coward. He asks if she wants to stay this way. He points out she's wasting her massive raw power around those useless fools. Honestly, she isn't a bad person, just incredibly timid and afraid of everything. A total crybaby, a bit of a loser, terrified of her own shadow. But none of that matters, because right now is where she finally changes. With absolute gravity, he warns her that their choices from now on are permanent. Otherwise, she'll face a lifetime of bitter regret, much like he once did. Placing a firm hand on her shoulder, he demands her final decision. Asel is completely stunned. A guy like him actually worries about her. He shrugs, saying he won't force her. Her life is her own. If she wants to run away, she's free to go back. He has things to do. Turning to leave, he smiles as she desperately begs him to wait, wanting change. A satisfied smirk crosses his face. He'll teach her exactly how to survive. He commends her. For once in her life, she's actually acting maturely. Now it is time to face her very first challenge on this path. Everything is going according to plan. Let's see how long this perfect plan holds. Peering through the dense leaves, a trembling Asel asks if that's her target. He whispers back that it's the ideal beast to draw out her dormant power. Right there sits a vicious Luna goblin, and yes, it's the massive leader. Highly amused, he glances over and asks if she's enjoying her first mission. Asel nervously whispers if they should begin, staring at a sleeping Luna goblin nearby. Normally, these monsters infested this specific quiet area. Standard ones had yellowish skin and misshapen bodies, but these lunar variants were different. Their defining trait was a complete and absolute obsession with gold, and they loved stealing it. Ambushing traveling merchants was their favorite way to steal shiny objects. The beasts piled their stolen loot in one spot to celebrate the moon festival on bright nights. Asel finally understood why they came here tonight. Ronin casually declared they were going to rob the entire sleeping goblin horde right now. He had already heard legends of monsters guarding their hordes. Asel nervously asked how his companion even knew about this. Smiling, Ronin replied that he had his own special ways before suddenly pulling Asel closer. He explained that he would use telekinesis to grab all the gold. The plan sounded incredibly simple to Ronin, but Asel was not convinced about this crazy idea. One small slip would wake the beasts, and trust me, they would be furious. Thinking the plan was way too dangerous, Asel begged him to reconsider. But Ronin explained to his terrified friend that entering the prestigious Fian Academy required two specific things. First was money, and the second was real combat experience, which mattered much more. Experience was crucial, as Fian was full of elite aristocrats. To stand any chance against those highborn prodigies, Assel had only one real option left. He had to gain raw power by risking his life in real danger. These sleeping monsters were perfect targets to secure both wealth and growth. Since the boy did not have a single better idea, they were starting the operation immediately. With a smirk, Ronin used telekinesis to float the treasure into their bags. A shimmering stream of gold, silver, and precious jewels slowly filled the heavy sacks to the brim. He kept muttering that they just needed a bit more until the bags overflowed. Watching the massive pile of loot quietly slide inside, Ronin wore an incredibly satisfied grin. Once the final bag stuffed tight, he happily declared that the job was finished. Real combat experience is always the absolute best teacher, Ronin noted while patting his friend. He patted Assel's head, knowing the boy lacked confidence but would adapt quickly. Assel was doing great, and Ronin's eyes gleamed with absolute delight. He felt incredibly lucky to have found such a perfect servant, meaning it was finally time to leave. They needed to slip away quietly before their luck ran out completely. Suddenly, a bird flew rapidly through the dark canopy of the silent forest. Two loud boys dashed right behind it, shouting and causing an absolute scene in the dark. The loud chase echoed nearby, instantly catching the attention of Ronin and Assel. Ronin scowled, deeply wondering what kind of complete idiots were causing so much chaos right now. Unfortunately, the loud commotion woke up all the sleeping monsters. The angry beasts rubbed their eyes and immediately rushed to check their massive treasure chests. Discovering the empty boxes, they shrieked that someone had stolen their gold. Within seconds, the entire camp was fully alert and aggressively searching for the sneaky thief. The boys desperately tried to sneak away, but their luck finally failed. A sharp-eyed goblin spotted them, and yeah, things were about to get crazy. Assel froze in absolute terror as a massive horde of angry monsters began to surround them. Panic setting in, Assel frantically asked if they should drop the bags. He wondered if abandoning the heavy loot was their only choice to survive. How on earth was he supposed to pay for tuition or even make a living now? But there was no time to think. The goblins already pinpointed their exact location. Ronin checked his blade, immediately realizing the weapon was made of incredibly cheap steel. It wouldn't hold up for more than 15 strikes, and 15 monsters stood waiting. The beasts growled, completely impatient to tear them apart while Assel panicked. Still, Ronin remained completely locked in, silently tightening his cold grip. He calculated his moves. 15 precise swings would be more than enough. With a sudden flash, he lunged, and Assel watched heads fly. A single massive sweep cleaved through 3 of them, leaving 14 strikes remaining. Those annoying alarm birds were still fluttering nearby, screeching in panic. Ronin jammed his blade right into a bird's skull, declaring that to be the final one. He shrugged, not bad at all. Meanwhile, Assel remained completely frozen on the ground. To the young boy, what just happened defied all logical reality. Ronin had cleaved 3 beasts instantly, then wiped out the rest without breaking a sweat. For a split second, Ronin literally vanished, reappearing right in front of them. The monsters stood absolutely zero chance. Assel was left breathless by the violent spectacle. Ronin glanced back, asking if he planned on daydreaming on the dirt all day. He told the kid to get up so they could finally head back home. So much for an easy trip, as his entire body now ached. Slaughtering these weak pests shouldn't have drained his stamina so quickly. Conditioning was clearly needed. Assel then quietly brought up those terrifying screams. Ronin frowned, realizing those shrieks were what sparked this whole chaotic mess. Those responsible would pay dearly for putting their lives on the line. Suddenly, a sharp whistle cut through the air, an arrow flying straight at Assel. Before it could strike, Ronin snatched the flying projectile out of midair. Assel trembled violently, staring at the sharp steel caught inches from his face. Honestly, you can't even blame him for thinking this entire forest is cursed. 2 figures who caused that initial uproar now stepped forward. Ronin glared at them, utterly unimpressed when they tried to play the victim. They offered a shallow, nervous apology, claiming they were just harmless kids. The archer babbled about mistaking them for monsters while shifting his greedy eyes. His gaze lingered entirely on the valuable treasure spilling out of their heavy backpack. The other boy muttered a fake scolding. Ronin snapped at them to cut the crap. They couldn't even hide their murderous intent. He demanded to know their real names. A tense silence stretched between them before they offered to introduce themselves properly. But their hands were already resting dangerously close on their sword hilts. One lunged straight at Ronin's throat, barking about some target named Calibero. Ronin caught the attacker's wrist mid-swing, delivering a brutal, bone-shattering punch right to his jaw. The boy collapsed. Ronin clearly knew exactly who these lowlifes were, and he despised them. Seeing his partner drop, the second thief charged in blindly. Assel watched him rush forward unarmed, panic instantly flaring up in his chest. Acting on instinct, he unleashed his telekinesis, freezing the attacker mid-stride to protect his partner. The thief gasped. It was the legendary invisible hand, pinning him completely. Before finishing the fight, Ronin threw a surprisingly proud smirk toward Assel. Now it was his turn to play. He gripped his weapon and stepped past him. He delivered multiple brutal strikes. The kid was falling, but everything happened so insanely fast. He did not even realize what was happening. Ronin simply stood there, watching him plummet. The bandit slammed into the ground. Assel, despite his brave attempt to help, was still trembling. Terrified, he asked Ronin if the boy was dead. Ronin coldly confirmed it, leaving no doubt. He was not about to let scum like that live, asking if Assel missed their name. They were Calibero, an infamous group built on poaching and kidnapping. They ran human trafficking networks, easily the most malicious syndicate in the Empire. While dealing with the second bandit, Ronin pointed out that if he had not stepped in, they would have certainly harvested and sold Assel's organs. Knowing who they were and letting them walk away was a crime. Ronin told Assel to stop crying over spilt blood and start gathering their loot. Suddenly, he spotted a strange sack squirming on the ground. Assel wondered what was inside. Assel asked if it was an animal, but Ronin was already busy tearing the sack open. He muttered that they would know soon enough. The moment it opened, a bird shot out. It fluttered wildly, leaving Ronin to wonder what kind of blue chicken he just released. The bird hovered nearby, making Ronin question why on earth it was completely blue. Assel admitted he had never seen a blue bird, and Ronin agreed it was a first. Then Ronin noticed heavy shackles around its legs, instantly recognizing the custom design. Those cuffs were Calibero traps, designed to completely disrupt a captive's mana. They heavily restricted movement, usually reserved for rare prisoners or highly valuable creatures. That meant this strange bluebird was far from an ordinary forest creature. It stared directly at Ronin, almost as if it was waiting for some kind of response. As soon as Ronin realized its true identity, the creature established a magical link. Assel freaked out when he heard it speak, but Ronin calmly explained the communication magic. Since it spoke right after escaping the sack, the container must have blocked its mana. Ronin spoke back through the connection, asking if he was indeed the bird's owner. The voice introduced himself as Vaughn, a dedicated researcher studying rare magical beasts. Vaughn apologized for his abrupt manners and asked who he was speaking with. Ronin simply replied that they were travelers who had just run into some thieves. They had just dealt with the bandits who kidnapped the poor creature. Ronin casually told him they saved it, causing Vaughn to sigh in massive relief. Vaughn admitted he had worried about kidnapping, but never expected it to actually happen. He expressed his immense gratitude, confessing he had no idea how to repay them. Assel chimed in saying no reward was needed, just a way to return the bird. Ronin noted the bird was completely exhausted, but removing the cuffs might let it fly. Vaughn agreed, explaining that the dream bird had an incredible sense of direction. If they could just free it, the little creature would fly right back home. Hearing this, Ronin drew his sword and shattered the heavy iron shackles in one clean strike. He gently told the bird to go back to its owner, calling it Little Blue. He told the creature to fly home and stop, making its caretaker worry so much. The bird chirped and gestured, but Ronin could not quite figure out what it wanted. It happily wagged its tail feathers at him, leaving the young swordsman utterly confused. Vaughn chuckled over the link, explaining that the bird wanted Ronin to pluck a feather. Once removed, a dream bird's feather acts like a perfect compass pointing directly to it. He asked if they had ever plucked one before, extending a warm invitation to visit. If they ever passed through the area, he would be absolutely thrilled to host them. The elite academy at some point, begging them to visit him and Marquez, as the majestic bird soared away. Into the distance, it shrieked a promise to pay off its debt. The boys stood there in silence, quietly staring at the single feather left behind. They slipped it inside the bag and just kept staring. Fast forward a few days, and they arrived in a bustling town to sell those two rare treasures for some quick cash. A wealthy merchant took one look, instantly realizing these objects were highly unusual, immediately offering 20 gold coins for just one of them. The merchant remarked that every single item they carried was incredibly valuable. Ronin could not help but grin. Glad to find someone who actually understood quality. The other local merchants were dishonest swindlers. He never expected to meet such a fair businessman out here. The trader chuckled, saying he was deeply honored, but Ronin had something else on his mind, telling the merchant there was one more item he wanted to identify. He reached into his deep pocket and pulled out a strange object. He presented it, making it clear he had absolutely no intention to sell, since he was only curious about its origin. Ronin vividly remembered the wild night he caught that weird blue bird and how it had left this strange thing behind. When he first held it, he thought the bird had just pooped. He figured the chicken was repaying his kindness with a warm pile of garbage. Disgusted, he had immediately hurled the thing hard against a solid boulder, but the rock completely shattered while the egg remained flawless. That was when he realized this was no ordinary piece of junk. The merchant adjusted his glasses completely, unsure if it was an egg, but confirmed it was definitely from some mythical beast. The merchant kept closely examining its unusual color and rocky texture. Feeling pretty good, Ronin decided to poke some fun. He jokingly asked the trader if the egg came from a horse. The merchant laughed and shook his head, admitting he had absolutely no clue. He advised Ronin to visit a specialized guild for a proper evaluation. Ronin quickly slipped the mysterious egg back into his coat and repeated that it was definitely not for sale. Then, transitioning to their real goal, Ronin asked if the merchant had any books on the prestigious Fian Academy. He explained they were aiming to take the brutal entrance exam, but honestly had no idea what to expect. The trader smiled warmly, mentioning his own daughter was preparing for that very same test and could easily show them the ropes. Right on cue, a sharp voice cut through the air. The merchant proudly introduced her as his one and only daughter, Maria. Hearing that name instantly sent a spark of recognition through Ronin, but seeing her face, he was completely caught off guard. The father quickly stepped in, introducing them as highly valued clients who just completed a deal. But Maria just scoffed, referring to the boys as literal children. Her father immediately scolded her, telling her to watch her sharp tongue in front of guests. The man turned to Ronin, sincerely apologizing for her attitude. Assel was busy chatting with the shopkeeper, completely missing how Ronin had quietly stepped aside. Ronin walked right up to Maria, staring intensely as he asked if she was really Maria. Sen, caught off guard by his sudden bluntness, she confirmed it, demanding to know how this complete stranger knew her family name. Ronin found the resemblance uncanny. Realizing she looked exactly like a guy he used to know, he gestured for her to step closer to whisper a bizarre question. He seriously wanted to know if she was a girl or actually a boy disguised as one. Maria stared back with absolute disbelief, completely unbelieving that anyone would ever ask such a question, baffled by his sheer audacity. No matter how much she tried, she simply could not comprehend what was going on inside this idiot's head. Ronin glanced over at her father, quietly wondering if the old Man actually had a hidden son somewhere. Furious, Maria snapped, telling him to shut his mouth, calling him completely insane before delivering a stinging slap across his cheek. That strike felt. The sensation was instantly familiar. He knew right away it was his past life friend, Count Maria Center. Ronin remembered serving alongside her as a soldier in a place called Armarlin. Maria ran supplies there. He had solid ethics and an incredibly easygoing vibe. He befriended everyone, but he hated certain topics that other guys loved talking about, and he had a weird habit of slapping people. Ronin never knew why, but since Maria died back then, he was just grinning now. He never expected to find the answer right here. It turned out Count Maria was actually a girl. She noticed his grin and prepared to slap him again. Ronin did not like that. He flicked her forehead, warning her not to get cocky just because he let her land that first blow. He only took it because he made a mistake. She asked if hitting twice counted as a mistake too, then head-butted him. Then came the hair-pulling brawl. Her father and Assel watched in shock and quickly stepped in to separate the two. They were fighting seriously. Later, Assel stood there confused. They were trying to kill each other earlier. But now they were casually chatting. Ronin began looking for gear to take. If the items there were not good enough, he would buy something else. Seeing they were fine, Maria pointed out 3 swords and a staff. She asked why he needed 3 blades. Carrying them would be tough. Ronin shrugged, asking for her opinion. They were decent, but that black iron sword was the best. She agreed that black iron was super durable. An item highly coveted by many renowned knights. Ronin quietly recalled the past. This specific black iron sword was actually his absolute favorite weapon back then. Maria then explained that the magic staff held an exceptional mana stone. It should go to Assel. Looking over, she asked if he was there. Mage, she asked about his magic, and he nervously answered telekinesis. She was amazed. Telekinesis was crazy powerful. With some effort, he could easily secure a scholarship. She then asked Ronin which style he would showcase during the practical exam. To enter the academy, he would need it. He had to impress the professors and showcase his best sword techniques. While the written test was tough, the practical exam was brutal. Ronin simply replied that a true swordsman only needs exceptional swordsmanship. Maria laughed, noting that applicants usually display their mana techniques. Ronin asked if teenagers wielding swords could even tap into mana yet. She confirmed basic combat requires it, but seeing his blank expression, she realized he had no clue. She asked if he truly did not know how to sense his own mana. Ronin then asked if it was like aura. Maria was completely shocked. A guy like him shouldn't even step foot in the academy. How did he even dare equate aura with mana? She declared he wasn't fit to follow her. Still, she asked if she could take those swords, since they were at a blacksmith. She wanted to see why he was so confident. Break them? Impossible. But if he did, she would pay triple. She ordered him to shut up and follow her for special training. She explained that mana flows through nature, and mastering it unlocks a swordsman's true strength. She felt explaining the difference between mana and aura to him before the academy was pointless. Still, she explained that if you look at it from a certain perspective, aura is technically a type of mana, but the actual gap between them is like heaven and earth. Even the most talented warriors have to train for at least 10 years just to barely touch that power, and that is aura. She asked if he got it, and he nodded. He mentioned encountering some aura users on the battlefield a while back, and feeling a bit proud back then, thinking they shared some kind of common ground. Sure, they were incredibly annoying, but he never expected to find out how amazing they truly were. Maria cut him off, saying that was enough talking and they needed to start. She figured he would learn much faster through his body instead of his head. As she readied her stance, he assumed he would be fine against a young girl. All he had to do was block her incoming strike, but then the clash happened. He was genuinely caught off guard. Her heavy strikes were no joke. Still, he managed to block and shove her back, utterly shocked by her raw power. Despite her young age, especially since she was wielding dual swords, Maria was struggling. Unable to see clearly, but she suspected his strange style was fueled by mana. She kept her eyes locked on him, wondering what his deal was. She decided to end this with a single blow, showing him the true gap of mana. So he would just give up on the academy exam before getting humiliated there. Instead, she was the one getting pressured. Talk about a reality check. This was the skill of someone without mana. He asked her what she was dreaming about. As she suddenly focused up, making the entire duel way too easy for him. He went on the offensive, shouting for her to start dodging instead of blocking. She felt a surge of fear, but he was not slowing down. She had to move. Ronin was playing for keeps now. One wrong move and she was done. Catching her breath, she told Ronin he was a monster, and he just smirked back. He countered that she was the weird one. Still, she admitted his talent was incredible. Even if his swing was a little rusty, fixing that minor issue would change everything. When she saw him turn around to leave, she furiously demanded to know where he was going. She asked if he actually thought he won. He brushed it off. She had a promise to keep. Holding up her broken sword, he reminded her of the triple payment. With that settled, he told them to get the swords ready. Meanwhile, Assel was waving to get her attention, wanting to offer some praise. He said she did great, especially since even he could follow the fight. Ronin just muttered for him to walk faster because he was exhausted. Left alone on the field, Maria could only stare, wondering who those two really were. Later, Ronin headed over to the merchant market to collect his actual reward. Spotting a heavy stack next to the coins, he asked if she brought books. Maria confirmed they were her personal summary notes for the theoretical exam. She asked if he would need them, since the exam was only a month away. He admitted they would help, but questioned why she was going to all this trouble. Wondering if she was planning to mess with him, she quickly denied it. Honestly, she had simply started to like them and genuinely wanted them to pass. She warned them to study hard, threatening that slacking off would not go unpunished. When she demanded if he understood, Ronin coolly told her the exact same went for her. As she left in her father's carriage, she promised they would meet again soon. Study hard, she told them. Read everything. We will meet on exam day. Ronin knew his limits. He had to build his weak body and study. He did not mind the grind. This was his life now. Back home with his sister Errol, he ate until he stuffed himself completely. His stomach almost burst, then the endless stamina training began. He pushed his body to adapt, finally finding the perfect training spot. No mercy, he cleared out every single monster near the village. He also studied military tactics. He had to know his stuff. Unsure of how his journey would end, he gave everything. A month passed. Finally, they reached Valon, the central city. Assel was absolutely awestruck. The academy was massive and beautiful. Ronin just sighed. What are you doing? Standing in the middle of the road like a total bumpkin. Move it. They were late, very late. Assel froze, staring blankly at Ronin. What is wrong? Ronin asked. Assel admitted he was completely surprised. It had only been a single month, yet Ronin already looked so much bigger. Patting Assel on the head, Ronin just laughed and asked if he was starting again. Quit talking nonsense, he said. He wondered who they might meet inside. Maybe he would finally cross paths with the legendary young sword saint. Schlieffen, the genius descendant of the prestigious, noble Grantia family. They would probably meet at the exam, not that it really mattered. Assel suddenly piped up. Did Ronin bring that thing? What thing? Ronin asked. The blue bird's feather, the one meant to guide them to its owner. Ronin had packed it safely, remembering the old man lived in the capital. He planned to visit after the exam, but the feather suddenly pointed up. It pointed directly to the highest floor. There the bird's owner sat, struggling. He was honestly considering going back to research, but his bird. Marquez tried to cheer him up. This was Professor Varen Ganusher. Varen was a lion beastman, currently complaining about teaching to his little bird. He asked Marquez to open the window. Maybe his savior would visit today. Right then the window swung open. No knock, Ronin just casually climbed in. Spotting the blue bird, Ronin smiled. So you are the owner then. The sudden entrance gave the professor a total panic attack. Who are you? Assel groaned in exhaustion behind him. That was a lot of stairs to climb. Ronin teased him about being scared, while Varan initially glared in anger. He thought they were bird thieves, but then he saw Marquez's blue feather. Varan paused to connect the dots. These were his saviors, the heroes. He apologized profusely, but Ronin shrugged. No need, it is totally fine. If you want to blame anyone, blame Assel. He made us climb up. Ronin quickly clamped his hand over Assel's mouth, telling him to shut up. Ronin chuckled. He never expected a giant lion beastman to own this bird. Varan was equally shocked. He had no idea his saviors were just applicants. What a pity, he sighed, if only he had known about this sooner. He could have written them a recommendation letter, bypassing the entire test. But with the exam starting this very afternoon, he could only wish them luck. Pressed for time, Ronin presents the strange stone. What exactly is it? The blue bird had left it behind, and the professor immediately identifies it as a dream egg. Marquez was the one who laid this incredible egg during a peaceful moment. The professor emphasizes this is no ordinary shell. It is a legendary dream bird egg. However, even the professor has absolutely no clue what kind of creature will eventually hatch. Usually, another dream bird would emerge, but the professor explains the reality is far different. The magical compass differs, as hatching depends heavily on environment and mana. Analyzing the mana radiating from the shell could help predict the result, but there is a catch. While predicting the creature is technically possible, this particular egg is completely chaotic. Swirling mana, it looks like molten metal, almost as if it was altered. He cannot guarantee the outcome, though he wonders if he is overthinking a simple egg. Turning to Marquez, the professor demands to know where the bird even found this. The old scholar chuckles, noting he has never encountered such an incredibly cheeky bird. Now the professor has a special request, asking Ronin if he would mind raising it. Ronin agrees without hesitation, though he wonders if taking such a treasure is actually fine. He asks the professor if this is truly okay, considering how valuable the egg is. The professor admits it is priceless. These unique birds only lay one egg per lifetime. Yet Marquez laying the egg right in front of Ronin feels like a sign of trust. The bird clearly sensed something special, and the professor wants to respect his companion's choice. Ronin gladly accepts the task, admitting he is deeply curious to see what lies inside. With their departure drawing near, Ronin begins to say his goodbyes to the old scholar. They must leave within 2 years, but the professor quickly asks him to hold on. He wanted to properly reward Ronin, and finally came up with the perfect parting gift. Smiling, he hands over a special device designed to assist in incubating the mysterious egg. Cut to some time later, inside the bustling waiting area of the practical examination hall. A voice echoes, the exam for Candidate 111 has concluded. Candidate 102 is called, meaning Ronin is up very soon. He sighs, feeling like they are taking forever, and asks Maria for her thoughts. She shrugs, saying every exam is this tedious, before he questions her unusually fancy outfit. Uncomfortable clothing, she quickly tells him to lower his voice. This prestigious academy is heavily private for nobles, so appearances are absolutely vital. These wealthy students could become lucrative clients later, making a proper first impression key. Their friend Assel is missing, but the mage exam is being held elsewhere anyway. Candidate 102 is finished. Now, Candidate 113 must enter. Finally, it is his turn. Maria advises him to stay calm and follow her instructions. She jokingly warns him that if he fails, she will never let him live it down. Completely unfazed, Ronin promises to return shortly before stepping inside to face the evaluators. Standing before him are several elite figures, likely the prestigious professors of the academy. Every single examiner looks incredibly imposing, but the old man seated in the center stands out. That is none other than Principal Cravasier, the legendary archmage, accompanied by a powerful woman. Feeling an intense vigor he rarely experienced in his past life, Ronin respectfully greets them. He clearly states his name, and the principal is the first to welcome him. Cravasier instructs him to demonstrate his skills by attacking the magical dummy before them. Confident, Ronin decides a single, lightning-fast slash should be more than enough for a dummy. Just a simple slash, but the result catches him off guard. Sensing zero mana, two professors sneered that the boy only judged by appearances. That target dummy was actually a highly valuable piece of magic engineering. Even a recognized genius like Schlieffen could barely leave a single scratch. He watched closely, wondering what kind of display this newcomer could possibly show. The headmaster felt highly uncomfortable, noticing how they openly insulted the candidate. Especially since they had no idea if the boy would prove them wrong. Then in a flash, Ronin sliced the target head clean off. This dramatic display immediately impressed the great Swordmaster, Instructor Stabos. Sheathing his weapon, he calmly asked if that was the entire test. The professors gaped, unable to believe he treated this ultimate feat so casually. One of them demanded a score, but the principal was completely speechless. She vaulted right over the judging table. Stabos lunged forward, holding her sharp blade directly against Ronin's neck. He blinked at her, calmly stating that she had startled him. She demanded to know who he was and who taught him. Confused, Ronin simply watched as she suddenly pivoted her questions. She asked if he could read her movements, and he calmly said yes. He complimented her speed, but she pointed out something far more shocking. Drawing a blade should have been impossible, yet he swung it 3 times. It was 3 rapid strikes, exactly as he had shown the other instructors. Did he really think she would overlook such an arrogant, hidden move? Or did he assume she would fail to recognize his unique swordsmanship? He deliberately slowed his final blow so the slow judges could follow it. It felt like he was mocking them, forgetting who was actually in charge. She warned him that the academy leadership was watching, but she was wrong. He simply held back his power, knowing his sword was far too cheap. It would have shattered, though she was currently in no mood to listen. Lowering her sword from his neck, she promised she would remember him. With a sharp glare, she declared she would oversee his education personally. The headmaster watched silently, reading between the lines of her sudden threat. He knew she had just claimed this talented kid as her personal disciple. And trust me, he was going to watch this kid very closely. Clearing his throat, the headmaster praised Ronin for an excellent performance. He decided to conclude the evaluation with one final, simple question. Assuring him there was no wrong answer, he asked him to speak freely. He asked what the young boy truly wished to learn at their academy. Ronin simply replied that he came to learn how to avoid regrets. That caught the headmaster completely off guard, leaving him stunned. He wondered how they could teach anyone to live without regrets. A nearby professor thought the boy was plain, yet he captivated everyone. A quick look at the damaged dummy proved his talent was real. Deep in discussion, the professors only now examined the test target closely. When one of them finally got a good look, he froze. The heavy head of the engineered dummy was completely gone, severed entirely. He realized that even with their best skills, nobody here could replicate that. Even in his prime, defeating her was impossible, he thought he had already faced. Plenty of tough challenges, but meeting her made him realize he still had a long way to go. Now he knew the commander was absolutely right to send him to this academy, believing Ronin had so much left to learn. Only one final hurdle remained, the written exam. After memorizing countless books over the past month, he figured it would be easy. But once the actual exam started, he realized he was in serious trouble. The test was brutally hard for him, but then again, that was nothing new. His entire life had been a struggle. Mario was furious, lecturing Assel for only answering half the exam. The poor guy had gathered all his study materials, reviewed them diligently, and then completely blanked. Assel felt incredibly guilty, blaming himself for not reminding Ronin, but Maria told him to relax because the practical exam carried far more weight, and given his insane combat skills, he surely did. Amazing, suddenly, the crowd of students grew restless as the results were finally unveiled. A giant magical board materialized in the air, displaying the successful names. Assel nervously asked if that was the passing list, looking at Assel's own results. He ranked 12th in practical magic and took first place in the theory exam. Maria secured 9th place in both practical and theory, looking over at Assel. The two of them jumped for joy, absolutely thrilled to have passed. Maria praised him highly for taking first in theory. Only he and two others had reached that high. Maria was incredibly happy for him, before turning to ask Ronin about his rank. Looking a bit downcast, Ronin muttered that he already knew he would not be on it. He believed someone like him stood no chance. Maria got annoyed, asking if he was joking, telling him to look closer as her eyes widened. Suddenly, a blinding light shot down, creating a small explosion. Maria explained that this was the grand announcement for the absolute top-ranking candidates of each department. A majestic, glowing phoenix carried the news, gliding directly toward Ronin. The fiery bird burst into a spectacular message in the sky, revealing that Ronin had ranked first in the martial arts practical, but almost dead last. In theory, to say the group was completely shocked is an understatement. Then the other two threw their arms around Ronin, squeezing him tight. He might have bombed the written test, but he was still the undisputed king of the physical combat track. Maria was ecstatic, knowing he was a pure genius. Realizing his first-place rank meant that other top prodigy must have lost to him. With her fiery personality, she could never stay quiet. Meanwhile, a silent observer watched Ronin from afar, intrigued. Soon, the noble youth approached the group, asking if Ronin was the legendary talent who took first in the practical combat exam. And just like that, he met the future sword saint, Schlieffen, for the first time. Now the two stood face to face. Nearby students whispered, shocked to see the Empire's brightest rising star. Maria nudged Ronin, warning him that this guy clearly wanted something, and his intense presence was going to be a massive drag. Schlieffen had never met anyone with superior swordsmanship before. His aura was absolutely overwhelming, and Ronin wanted nothing to do with it, activating maximum avoidance. He claimed he had absolutely no clue what was happening. This response clearly irritated the young noble, who demanded to know why Ronin was lying. Ronin just shot back, asking for proof before he kept trying to pick a fight. Pressing the attack, the young man demands proof and promises to show him real strength. Drawing his sword, he charges forward. Maria and Assel watch in absolute terror. He demands proof, claiming that only a true top-ranked student could possibly react to his lightning strikes. Only a top ranker could react to that. Onlookers quickly gather. They suspect a duel. He orders Ronin to showcase his true strength. Ronin wants to avoid fighting, but since he is being forced, he complies. He launches a heavy blow, but the young heir blocks it. Ronin asks if he is satisfied, but the opponent just smiles. He admits that top rank makes perfect sense. The technique is incredible. Still, the noble boasts that such a basic strike is not nearly enough to defeat him. Ronin desperately wants to escape, but the sword saint demands to see more. He refuses to back down, and that is when Ronin senses danger. The guy is genuinely trying to kill him. This is bad. If this keeps going, he will unleash his aura, causing total destruction. A single slash from his blade summons a devastating storm. Knowing he cannot survive the storm sword, Ronin turns and runs. The opponent yells that running is futile and swings at Assel instead. He aims his sword directly at the boy's throat, but suddenly stops. Seeing what Ronin did, he freezes. Terrified, Assel asks what Ronin is doing. The proud sword saint is absolutely disgusted by this underhanded human shield tactic. He calls Ronin a total coward for using a helpless girl to protect himself. Assel desperately screams out that he is actually a guy, but Ronin's psychological trap has already succeeded. He knew the noble would prioritize chivalry, exploiting it completely. He punches him right in the face, grabs Maria and Assel, and runs. They sprint away as onlookers call the city guards to break up the chaos. When the guards arrive, they find Lord Schleen standing alone. They ask what happened and who dared to raise a hand against him. He tells them to speak casually, reminding them that here, he is just a regular applicant. He assures them everything is fine, claiming it was just a fair match. He promises to handle it himself, then takes a look at his weapon. Look closely at his sword. Even high-grade mithril could not withstand Ronin's power. He assumed Ronin was weak, never expecting such serious damage. He vows to remember that name, the next morning in the forest. Far outside the busy capital walls, the two of them walk together, closely studying a map. Ronin insists the location is nearby, but Assel is still shaking. He is still stressing over yesterday's clash with the powerful Duke's heir. He heard the guy was extremely important, but Ronin calmly tells him not to stress. The guy is actually decent, just completely obsessed with his sword fighting. In fact, he is a model noble who genuinely goes out of his way to protect the weak. That is why they had to call it a fair, mutual duel. Otherwise, the heavy-handed city guards would have already dragged them straight to prison. Assel nods in agreement. Suddenly, Ronin spots the mysterious mana source. This pure energy flows silently through the earth, holding a value that is honestly astronomical. Anyone else would hoard it, but their professor was generous. It feels like a massive fortune just for cracking open a simple egg. Ronin asked Assel if he felt anything different. Assel nodded. It was his first time. Seeing such dense mana concentrated in a single place, here he could cast freely. Maria pointed out that the egg in his pocket was reacting just like before. It was absorbing the rich magical energy at an incredible speed. It loved it. Ronin nodded, silently wishing that Maria were there to witness this magnificent sight. Assel remained quiet, staring at the swirling mana source before turning to Ronin. He asked if something felt off. The professor had said this place was packed with magical beasts and nesting creatures. Even normal animals would be drawn to it. But there was absolutely nothing. No rustling, no cries. Why was it so quiet? That simple question hit Ronin hard. He had been far too complacent. Danger was coming. It happened everywhere he went. He warned them to get ready. A heavy scent of blood was suddenly drifting through the dark forest. Assel shuddered. The cold scent of death made his stomach churn in panic. Ronin whispered that they were not alone. Others had already arrived before them. These were not peaceful visitors. They were lethal invaders. And then the arrows flew. A sudden, deadly rain of sharp projectiles came whistling directly at their heads. Ronin moved like lightning. He drew his steel sword to deflect the incoming barrage. He examined the fallen arrows. He knew these. They were from the squad's camp. A memory flashed of a cocky archer boasting about these specialized, lethal weapons. He bragged they could easily shatter the skull of a fully grown, charging orc. After endless boasting, the hunter had even offered some to their commanding officer. For a criminal caught using illegal gear during a restricted hunt, he was shameless. But the scout kept bragging, calling the main user a legend with 100 kills. That elite killer was known throughout the region as Calibaro's personal hunting dog. Ronin remembered his utter disgust, a dog proudly wearing its leash. Snapping back to reality, Ronin yelled at Assel to take cover and stay safe. Don't become an easy target. Then, with a blur of speed, he charged forward. The archers realized Ronin was on the move, but they were already too late. He unleashed a single, devastating slash. The mana-infused arrows exploded into harmless sparks. Zigzagging through the trees, Ronin closed the distance in a heartbeat. The enemy commander ordered his men to scatter and focus all fire on him. Ronin was mildly impressed. Their reaction time was elite, unlike the usual forest garbage. But fighting was a waste of time. He needed to talk. "Stop attacking," Ronin bellowed, his voice echoing. "Do you not recognize your allies? Have you seriously never heard of my name? I am the new hunting dog. I serve the prestigious Damacy lineage." The hidden archers froze, whispers immediately breaking out. They scoffed at his words. No one believed a mere child could be one. "If you doubt me," Ronin sneered, "go ask the family's wolf. He'll teach you. Assuming others cannot do what you fail to achieve is a pathetic, lazy habit." He called them simple house pets. There was nothing more embarrassing than that. Infuriated, the mercenary leader lunged forward and grabbed the insolent child's shirt. He growled that the kid was humiliating them and threatened to cut his arms off. Another commander stepped in, telling him to calm down and lower his weapon. He warned that the boy knew way too much about Calibaro's internal workings. Such highly classified secrets were only shared with the most elite members of their faction. They had to confirm with their captain. If Ronin was lying, they were dead. And cross the Damies family, bad idea. Right then, a man approached. He grumbled about telling them to stay quiet, demanding to know what happened. The newcomer was their captain, the brutal leader of the Demoth wolf pack. A subordinate quickly explained that some random kid claimed to be one of them. Ronin watched silently. The captain's presence meant they were all gathered right here. It was the perfect trap. The beast captain stepped forward, looking down at Ronin. "Are you a Hayote from the Damies family?" he asked. Ronin nodded. The captain frowned, highly suspicious of what a noble was doing on their mountain. Smiling, Ronin replied that he had no idea. After all, he wasn't one. Then he drew his sword. In a flash, he began slicing them apart. Using a fake name was simply the ultimate cover for a rogue mountain hunter. He lunged at the captain, taking his head. No hesitation, just death. Ronin turned to the thug who had tried to pick a fight earlier. "I warned you," Ronin said coldly, before cleanly severing the man's fingers. The thug collapsed, screaming in agony. Ronin tossed a leaf down with a sharp command. "If you want to live, get up right now and start writing every camp location." He pressed the cold blade against the man's throat. "Write," he ordered. "Is there a problem? Because if you refuse, you don't need to breathe." The terrified thug begged for mercy, crying out that he had no pen. Ronin smiled warmly. "Oh, but I have already made a few pens for you." He pointed directly at the bloody hand, the one missing all its fingers. Reviewing the bloody map, Ronin chuckled, calling the man a natural artist. Sobbing, the thug asked if he would finally be allowed to leave. Ronin slipped his hands into his pockets, nodding gently. Of course, he promised. Then he added with a smile that he had absolutely lied. Later, as they walked, Assel collapsed, complaining about being completely exhausted. Ronin told him to stop whining, since he told him to prepare beforehand. It was too much. Assel nervously asked if Calibaro really did all this. Ronin reminded him that letting those monsters run free was the real crime. He assured Assel that these outlaws deserved to be put down permanently. Suddenly, they both froze. Something bizarre was happening on the path. Droplets of blood from the dead beasts began levitating into the air. The floating blood gathered together, forming a massive, swirling crimson tidal wave. Sensing immediate danger, Ronin gripped his sword, ready to slice it apart. But then the strange egg in his pocket began to vibrate furiously. It floated directly into the blood wave, greedily drinking up every drop. Assel panicked, asking what was happening, but Ronin had no clues either. They only knew one thing: whatever was inside that shell was not normal. The egg completely swallowed the massive wave, leaving the air totally clean. Assel asked if it was finally over. Ronin nodded, but remained cautious. Then the floating egg began to shake, tiny cracks spiderwebbed across it. Assel watched in absolute terror, but Ronin could only grin with excitement. It was finally hatching, a large hole formed, revealing a shadow inside. Suddenly, the newborn creature lunged out, slamming directly into Ronin's face. It shot right into his nose before he could register what it was, though he saw some wings. Could it be a dream bird? Ronin stared closely, but he still could not say for sure. Assel pointed out that it looked more like a dragon, resembling the legendary beasts from their books. He recalled the beautiful little blue bird from before, wondering how it could have transformed so drastically. Where in the world did this thing absorb enough mana to turn into such a bizarre creature? Stroking the newborn that had just broken out of its shell, he tried to make sense of it. He admitted the little beast was pretty cute, but he quickly got annoyed, complaining that its welcome was a bit too aggressive. A direct headbutt right out of the gate. Then, the tiny creature cast a strange magical seal. It launched the magic at the boy, and he suddenly realized that all his painful wounds were completely gone. Assel realized it could use healing magic, which definitely put a highly satisfied grin on Ronin's face. This companion had far more utility than they expected, so Assel suggested giving it a proper name. They could not call it a dream bird forever, and Ronin was still struggling to decide. Before he could settle on a name, the small creature suddenly perked up as if it heard something nearby. It immediately launched into the sky. Assel shouted out, wondering where it was going so suddenly. Here is the crazy part. Ronin calmly suggested the newborn had already sensed an enemy nearby. Nearby, a panicked wanderer from the Demir branch was running for his life, completely terrified. He only stepped out for a quick errand, but when he returned, he found everyone collapsed on the ground. He barely caught a glimpse of a massive, overwhelming force that looked like a crashing tidal wave. And now he was desperately running away as something terrifying chased him down through the woods. Tripping over a massive tree root, he crashed hard onto the dirt, completely defenseless. Suddenly, that strange dragon-like bird swooped down, landing on him and beginning to feed on his blood. The guy panicked as the creature refused to stop, until Ronin arrived and ordered it to stop. He wanted to avoid hurting his new pet. Assel then chimed in, suggesting the name Seta. Ronin agreed, admitting he already had that name in mind, before asking the little creature what it thought. The trembling young man on the ground stared up, realizing this was the very same terrifying guy from before. He realized Ronin was the master of this bird, so Ronin stepped closer to check if he was all right. He called him by name, Blaris, asking if he was okay. The dazed young man muttered that he survived. He thanked Ronin for saving his life, but then paused, looking utterly confused about who he was. How did this stranger know his name? In response, Ronin rested his cold blade right against his neck. He told Blaris that he did not need to know, which suddenly triggered a memory from the night before. He gasped, asking if Ronin was the infamous Houndmaster of the Calibro group. Ronin replied his rank was much lower back then, before presenting a task he needed him to do. He wanted to make sure the guy knew his place. Soon after, holding some gold coins, Ronin smiled. This payout was much better than he expected, and Assel nodded in agreement while examining the loot. Assel gathered some of the gold-turning water, looking quite perplexed by its magical properties. Ronin wondered why Maria's father put such a high bounty on her, but this money solved their problems. They no longer had to stress about funds, especially since they owed Professor Vaughn a great deal of gratitude. They had originally planned to visit the professor, express their thanks, and introduce him to Seta. But get this, they ended up dragged into a completely unexpected business trip instead. Aside from the task he assigned to Blaris, Ronin also had that map he took from the hunter. Threatening him was far more effective than a simple favor, ensuring the guy would stay in line. Ronin was absolutely certain he would not dare double-cross them now. Assel then asked about their next move. What would they do with the gold? Ronin noted that top-ranking academy students did not pay tuition anyway. He already had a specific plan in mind. Besides, the grand entrance ceremony was fast approaching. A few days later, they arrived at the bustling carriage station, ready for the next chapter. Arriving in Valon, the driver tells Errol they have finally reached their destination. She beams with excitement, The capital city looks absolutely incredible to her. As she marvels at everything, Ronin asks if the long journey exhausted her. She is thrilled to see him. He gently asks if anything went wrong. Earl snaps back. She says he should be the one answering that question. In truth, she was terrified when a luxurious royal carriage stopped outside. How was this even possible? Pinching his cheeks, she demands some real answers. Why did he lose so much weight? She worries he is not eating. She is relieved, but then spots a strange little animal on his shoulder. What is this cute creature? Ronin explains it is a traveling companion. This is Sita, his new friend. He warns her they must hurry. Time is running out. He has something extremely urgent to take care of. Soon they are standing inside a high-end, incredibly luxurious boutique. She knows he earned academy money, but these clothes seem way too much. These gifts are excessive. Ronin simply turns to the clerk with a smirk. He asks if everything his sister tried on can be delivered home. Earl is absolutely thrilled. Ronin insists they still need to buy even more. She is deeply touched. Her little brother has grown up so much. She spins around the shop, loudly bragging about how kind Ronin is. Next stop, Ronin tells her he needs to visit a few places. Specifically, he needs to deal with a sword that was damaged recently. He opens the door to leave, and you won't believe who's outside. Schlieffen calls his name. Ronin freezes, completely caught off guard. He nearly jumps out of his skin. Why is this guy here? Ronin demands to know if he is stalking him now. Schlieffen claims he was just picking up his sword and decided to wait. He tells Ronin to drop the attitude, but Ronin is not having it. Delusional stalker behavior. Ronin snaps, totally irritated by his presence. Schlieffen scoffs, blaming Ronin's own bad swordsmanship for the broken blade. If it were truly defective, he wishes he could actually prove it. Earl gets angry. She quickly lectures Ronin for using such bad language. Ronin tries to defend himself, but arguing only makes things worse. Embarrassed, he shuts up while his sister steps forward to apologize. She politely explains that her brother has a rough mouth but a golden heart. She hopes he is not shocked, but Schlieffen does not mind. To him, she looks like a literal goddess. He is completely spellbound. She blames her own lack of discipline, but Schlieffen takes the blame. He stammers that it was entirely his own lack of proper discretion. He reassures her, and she warmly takes his hands in gratitude. Having a reliable friend like him makes her so incredibly happy for Ronin. She asks him to look after her brother. Schlieffen blushes deep red. He agrees. Ronin watches this, absolutely hating every single second of it. Still blushing, Schlieffen promises to fully compensate him for the damaged sword. Since he has no gold on him right now, he offers another solution. He hands over his family crest as identification and a clear guarantee. Apparently, they could use this proof anywhere in the Empire, and if she wanted a sword, they had to go to the legendary blacksmith at the end of the street. The shop was famous for carrying a legacy of 500 years, making it almost impossible for normal commoners to enter. The guy hoped the smiths would forge a legendary blade for them, so Iro headed over. That was when Iro realized that crazy old man actually knew exactly what he was doing. With that identification token from Grandia, Iro could honestly buy this entire village if he wanted. He never expected this crazy guy to be the legendary sword master Schlieffen himself. At the academy entrance ceremony the next day, the principal welcomed all the eager newcomers. He introduced himself to the crowd as Krayer, the headmaster running this elite school. While Krayer gave his speech, Maria, Ronin, and Assel stood together among the students. High status meant Schlieffen stood right at the front with the professors. Headmaster Krayer finished by telling everyone they would soon make Empire history. He told the crowd he believed they would all become part of the Empire's history. After congratulating the new recruits, the headmaster formally addressed Class 787. Standing right in the middle, Ronin was already yawning, but his sister, totally in tears. She and the other guests were deeply moved. Then, the principal suddenly snapped his fingers. Instantly, a blinding wave of multicolored light began swirling wildly around the entire arena. Everyone watched in absolute shock as reality itself began to bend and distort. The sky shattered like glass, and in a flash, they were standing in a massive arena. A booming voice welcomed them, calling them the new freshman class. Nobody expected the principal to actually teleport the entire crowd with one single snap. Crayer announced that the ceremony was about to hit its absolute, thrilling peak. It was time for the traditional showdown between the battle-hardened seniors and the new freshmen. This classic event was the very first clash between the newcomers and the second-year students. It was always incredibly intense, a legendary rite of passage for the academy. During this event, the top two ranked freshmen would step up to represent their entire class. They would be matched up against four elite second-year veterans, each with unique fighting styles. From there, they would engage in a series of fierce, one-on-one duels. The principal warned that instructors would closely watch their performance. He believed that healthy, fierce competition was the foundation of a real education. He believed that healthy, fierce competition was the absolute start of true growth. From the crowd, Ronin's sister wondered if this violent duel was actually educational. The principal explained that the freshmen had the power to choose their opponents. They could even refuse the duel, so there was no reason to feel intimidated. He welcomed the freshman representatives to step forward and do as they pleased. The top-ranked second-year martial artist was Nando, followed closely by Brown. The third-ranked veteran was Irina, while the fourth spot belonged to Karan. They glared down at Ronin, clearly itching to test his skills in battle. Glancing at his sister, Ronin figured since things had escalated, he might as well show off. It was the perfect chance to reassure her and build some quick camaraderie with everyone else. He remembered that the rules allowed freshmen to choose their opponent for the duel. So he casually raised his hand and asked if he could make a quick suggestion. The principal asked what kind of proposal Ronin was actually suggesting. Since choices were free, he wanted to be personally taught by every single veteran there. This absolute bombshell made the seniors frown deeply, and then he added one more crazy demand. Fighting all of them at once, it was an unconventional challenge. They had to talk, the principal quickly asked Professor Nabarro's what she thought of Ronin's suggestion. Things worked differently here. Having raw power did not mean you could simply run completely wild here. You can bet the stakes were sky-high, no matter who won this. She assured the principal she would step in if things turned dangerous. He weighed his options carefully before deciding to let them proceed. The four seniors found it insulting that this freshman underestimated them. Someone told them to keep cool. Ronin was cocky but Schlieffen was undeniably strong. He was a dangerous opponent. They decided to unleash everything from the start, no mercy, Errol hated the chaotic tension. She screamed at her brother to stop. If it got dangerous, he could forfeit right now. He just waved. He tried to calm her down. Then the principal ordered the start. This veteran versus freshman clash was finally on, high stakes. Nando charged aggressively. Ronin slipped past the strike, easily. He realized these opponents were definitely several tiers above Maria from back then. Next was Irina stepping in to block him. Karan yelled for Irina to duck. He lunged, 2 against 1. Still, Ronin was not intimidated. He parried, impressed by their coordination. To break free, he blocked but was still pushed far back. While recovering from the impact, he noticed a new threat lunging forward. Braun demanded a fierce duel, but he completely failed to realize that Ronin possessed unbelievable speed and lethal follow-up strikes. They were not playing around anymore. The seniors coordinated quickly. They formed a quick strategy to corner their opponent, but when they launched their joint strike, they hit nothing. He was gone. Irina was stunned. That speed was absurd. This academy was truly full of monsters. Before the three even realized it, they had already taken heavy blows. Only 3 were hit directly. Braun was exceptionally strong, and Ronin respected him for that. He wanted to finish this, but he would show Braun respect. The two squared up, ready to settle the fight for good. But seeing the stance Ronin took, Braun knew he was done. There would be no holding back. Ronin was determined to win. He copied the exact form of Professor Nabarro's, sensing his fear. Ronin smirked at his opponent's terror and flashed right past him. Entirely broken, Ronin stood victorious against all 4 seniors. He casually claimed he learned a lot. The crowd erupted. Everyone screamed in absolute shock at what this freshman had done. They thought he would get crushed, but it was over instantly. People wondered if he was really a rookie, Nando admitted. It was so one-sided that he could not even feel mad. Everyone agreed he was a total monster. Ronin looked at his sister. He knew she would finally trust him. Now he had to speak. Acknowledging their incredible performance, bowing slightly to greet them, Ronin admits he learned a massive amount from their clash, pushed into this duel by pure academy hype. Their actual strength was still completely undeniable. He speaks with absolute sincerity, thanking them deeply for even agreeing to take on his sudden challenge. He even politely apologizes for his arrogant attitude during the heated fight. Hoping they can guide him more in the future, the seniors step back. Whispering quietly amongst themselves about this strange first year, they quickly agree that they completely misjudged the kid. He's incredibly strong, remarkably respectful. Brown grabs his arm, laughing that Ronin won fairly using nothing but raw talent. He gives it a firm squeeze, calling this the perfect attitude for an academy student. Ronin is truly one of a kind. Beside him, Arena notes his endless energy. He's secretly thrilled inside. He managed to show off his social skills to his sister, ensuring she will stop stressing over him. Meanwhile, a mysterious girl keeps her eyes locked on him, thoroughly intrigued. Soon, Ronin sits inside the massive grand hall for the welcome feast. Assel finds the place overwhelmingly giant. Maria just shrugs. This is the top academy, so luxury is expected. Assel asks if Ronin managed to see his sister yet. Ronin nods, explaining that it took a solid chunk of time to calm her down because she was incredibly anxious. He even left Seta behind to protect her and keep her safe. Hearing this, Assel praises him as the ultimate brother, and Maria eagerly agrees with a nod. But just as Ronin reaches for a juicy piece of meat on his plate, a shadow sneaks up. Schlieffen coldly asks if he seriously has the appetite to eat right now. Ronin glances over and immediately groans, "Not this guy, again." Annoyed, he slams his meat back down, nearly shattering the plate, and demands to know what he wants now. Schlieffen acts totally calm, claiming it is nothing serious. He just needs to verify a crucial detail. Clutching a notebook, he inquires where Arena lives and if the journey there is long. He presses for details on road conditions, security patrols, and any local monster sightings. Assuming Ronin hired her guards, he expects at least an entire mercenary army. Ronin sighs in frustration, snapping that the security is way tougher than he thinks. In fact, unless a giant wyvern suddenly drops from the sky, she is completely safe. Schlieffen pauses, instantly analyzing this. So, if a wyvern does appear, there could be trouble. With every single word, Ronin gets more visibly ticked off. He snaps, demanding to know why his sister's safety concerns him so much. What's his deal? Schlieffen simply replies that he is merely looking out for a new friend. After all, it is the duty of a true knight. Right then, a new girl approaches. She finds this whole interaction incredibly amusing, mocking how she has never seen the famous Grantia wolf speak so many words. Glaring, Schlieffen coldly asks what she wants. This striking noblewoman interrupting their chat is none other than Elizabeth Akalusha. Radiating absolute pride, she tells him not to flatter himself. He is not the one she is interested in. Her target is Ronin. Stunned, Ronin points at himself in pure confusion, asking why on earth she wants him. Schlieffen sighs, muttering about her annoying Habits, he tells Akalusha he is leaving anyway, so she can do as she pleases. But before walking away, he gives Ronin one last, incredibly intense look. Sending guards from his family, Ronin told him to stay out of it. Assel warned Ronin that she was the girl from before, but Ronin insisted there was no need to explain. He knew she was incredibly powerful. Akalusha warned that those who bared claws needed a lesson. She told Ronin that she knew he understood her meaning perfectly, but he acted completely clueless. She was highly interested in his talent, offering him a very special deal. This was a highly prestigious offer that a common thief could never dream of receiving. She revealed a necklace with a brilliant violet gemstone right in the center. That was the Akalusha invitation, unlike typical nobles who ignored bloodlines to prioritize talent above all else, offering incredible opportunity for highly talented people to become part of their great family. The symbol of that rare chance was this violet stone necklace. Ronin wanted to know if she was even allowed to hand that over. She replied that if he was asking, he must already know. He had heard it mentioned by someone while passing by, and now his thoughts drifted back to a previous life when he spoke with the commander. She had shown him this invitation, promising that even a commoner like him could join a legendary family, prompting him to ask if it was her own household. She confirmed it. That commander was a Dacian Akalusha. She told him he would obviously need to pass a test conducted by the patriarch himself, but with his raw talent, it would be effortless. She told him to keep this in mind. Once he paid for his crimes through outstanding service in the war, he might receive one. After all, she found him quite gifted. Returning back to the present, he stared at the necklace representing the Akalusha invitation. She remarked that since he already knew its true value, she did not need to explain anything, hoping he would make the right call. Elizabeth warned him that even a beast born wild could turn into a harmless sheep if it stayed near them long enough. With that, she and her party departed. Assel finally breathed a sigh of relief. Ronin realized those twins did whatever they wanted. Talk about chaotic, but at least he now had a solid contact. The Akalusha family could prove quite useful. Everything here depended on grades. The entire atmosphere could change instantly, as proven. Of this was the dormitory setup. The zone assigned to intermediate-level students was Nyan Hall. Each student received clean lodging and high-end cafeteria, creating an incredibly luxurious dormitory containing everything a student could ever need. On the very first day at Crater Hall, things typically kicked off with several noble students shouting about why they had to live there. The manager could only offer formal apologies for the lack of servants in Crater Hall. It meant 4 people per room, sharing a cafeteria, shower, and communal bathroom. The supervisor could not help them. These were strict academy rules so glaring at him changed nothing. If they just studied hard, they would escape. Otherwise, they would remain stuck there for another miserable semester. Finally, top students like Ronin entered Naberfoser Hall, which could easily be summarized in a single, simple sentence: absolutely breathtaking. Assel stood completely shell-shocked seeing the luxurious suite. He left class notes from the lectures explained earlier, knowing he had to select the specific academic courses he wanted to attend. Settling in during this initial period was crucial. As a fresh first-year student, Ronin heard that taking too many classes was a terrible idea. A total rookie mistake. He had not tasted hell yet. He got completely carried away and signed up for nearly every single class he wanted to learn, but day 1, instant exemption from basic swordsmanship. The instructor straight up told him there was nothing left to teach. Flawless skills, academy rules allowed immediate exemption for students who already knew everything. If you already knew the material, there was no point staying. Besides, keeping him around would only destroy the motivation of everyone else. Dismissed just like that, he ends up by the lake, sword buried in dirt. Pure disappointment. He cannot believe this prestigious place has so little to offer. No target practice, no monster hunting. they excused him from absolutely everything. He is banned from every single class. The frustration is real. This was not what he imagined. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out. A voice asks why he is not in class. Ronin spins around quickly. It is Instructor Nabarro's. One look at his face tells her everything. She guesses he got excused. Ronin sadly admits that she is correct. He asks if every single class is going to be this boring. She gets it. One glance was all he needed to copy her technique. As his teacher, she cannot ignore his talent. She demands his sword. Taking his cheap blade, she inspects the worn metal and asks him what he actually thinks. Get ready, because she is about to drop an absolute masterclass on him. Looking at his broken weapon, she calls it garbage that hinders his potential. A bad blade only limits power. She tells him to watch closely now. Placing her hand on her own hilt, she draws her sword in one swift motion. She unleashes a strike so powerful, it sends the entire lake exploding skyward. Water falls back down like a heavy storm. She asks what is missing. To him, a sword was just a sharp piece of metal for fighting. A disposable tool, but seeing her technique completely shatters that simple belief. Absolute perfection, the sheer power of the display is almost ridiculous to witness. He knows she used the exact same physical motion. The basic slash was identical. But why is the output so drastically different? She gives him the answer. Wasted energy dictates life or death. To survive, perfect efficiency is everything. If he wants to use mana, he must find a matching weapon. Since he does not use mana yet, he cannot truly understand this. He asks if she already knew his secret. She simply smiles and nods. But his raw physical energy is incredible. One day, he will wield mana. To control that power properly, he needs a real weapon, not scrap. She knows he has a lot on his mind, so she offers him a special invitation. She invites him to join her class, even though it is for upperclassmen. First years are usually banned, but she makes a very rare exception. Instead of his cheap metal, he must bring a real sword next time. On his first free day, Assel and Maria join Ronin on a trip. They visit the rundown forge Schlieffen mentioned when handing over the family crest. Looking at the crumbling building, Maria seriously doubts it will last much longer. She asks Ronin if he is absolutely sure about choosing this ancient place. The spot was frequented by Schlieffen's family, and Ronin knew they had to step inside. It was bad, truly terrible. Suddenly, a massive shadow swung the front door wide open. The beastmen grumbled about the noise, demanding to know who they were so early. Why were they shouting outside his workshop when the forge fire was clearly out? Ronin smiled, quite a bizarre sight, a massive, grumpy beastman standing in a forge. But the creature was hostile, aggressively asking if they were completely deaf or stupid. He wanted answers, fast. To calm him down, Ronin quickly showed their family crest. He explained that Schlieffen had sent them here for the best weapons in town. The giant beastman instantly recognized the prestigious Gracia family crest on the medallion. The beastman scoffed. Did Ronin seriously think showing off a fancy crest made him royalty? He had no idea who leaked this location, but he rejected most customers anyway. This arrogant rejection immediately set Ronin off, and he refused to leave empty-handed. He wanted his sword. The beastman licked his lips and offered a different deal. He suggested a simple trade, just hand over that little boy's left arm instead. He was starving. He literally wanted to eat Assel's arm right on the spot. Terrified, Assel squeaked that he tasted awful, while Ronin calmly inspected the creature's fangs. He called out to him, warning the giant beast that he had crossed a serious line. He drew his blade and struck. He knew things were off from the very start. But something strange blocked the blow, revealing a hidden set of armor beneath. Ronin gripped his hilt tighter, declaring that no armor would stop him from cutting. Not a chance. Ronin was ready to go all out and slice right through him. The beastman quickly backed off, waving his hands and screaming that it was a test. Ronin found it highly suspicious, demanding to know why he would do something so crazy. The blacksmith explained it was standard protocol to measure the skill of new clients. Plus, he really wanted to test the actual limits of his new invisible armor. He had no actual plans to harm them, but Ronin still remained highly skeptical. He suggested verifying the story with Schlieffen later if they still had any doubts. Assel whispered that this seemed like a really great way to get yourself killed. The beastman panicked and apologized, desperately trying to reassure the terrified young boy. He was no threat. He promised he was peaceful, so they had absolutely nothing to fear. He introduced himself as Diedekin, a humble apprentice and occasional gatekeeper for the forge. When asked for his name, the young swordsman calmly replied that he was Ronin. Diedekin smiled. Since Ronin needed a new sword, it was time to move. This messy cabin was merely the outer entrance to the true underground workshop. Leading them to a massive platform, Diedekin asked if they were ready. He told them to brace themselves before pressing a large mechanical button. Gears ground loudly. The heavy platform shuddered and began to slowly carry them down. Ronin asked what this contraption was, and Diedekin proudly explained it was a magic elevator. He boasted that this was the absolute grandest forge in the entire capital. Welcome to Grand Cappadocia. Assel could never have imagined a hidden world like this. A massive world hidden right under their feet is just absolutely mind-blowing. Diedekin grinned, excited to guide a client who actually passed the entry trial. He was leading them directly to the greatest master blacksmith in the capital. Ronin was completely stunned by the sheer scale of the massive underground city. Glowing magma filled his vision, making the massive forge look absolutely breathtaking. They only made weapons for the royal family and select nobles, without any bias. Every master smith in the realm worked here, but the absolute best of them. That title belonged to the legendary elder dwarf Doron. He was a true master. He had been melting metal for hundreds of years. Diedekin quickly explained that the stubborn old dwarf could be difficult, but his skills were unmatched. He kicked the front door wide open, showing zero respect as he entered. Walking right past a pile of weapons on the floor, Diedekin called out. He announced he had brought their guest. A gruff voice echoed back. Doron grumbled that only Diedekin could make that much noise at the entrance. He told him to stay quiet and work, but the guy never listened. Diedekin tried to make excuses, claiming he could not help it. The doorway was blocked by gear, and he complained that Doron nagged too much. Doron sighed and noted that since guests were here, he would stay civil. Diedekin proudly boasted that he had already tested the boy's sword skills personally. He claimed the kid was a genius, but Doron looked highly skeptical. Looking at Ronin, the elder dwarf saw nothing but a mere child. He demanded Ronin show his moves, boasting he could judge anyone instantly. But as Ronin unsheathed his blade, Doron got a good look at it. He scoffed, asking what kind of complete garbage Ronin was carrying around. Can you believe this? The crazy blacksmith smashed Ronin's blade with a hammer. The blade shattered, leaving Ronin absolutely furious at the crazy old dwarf. Doron merely pointed around the forge, telling Ronin to grab any weapon here. He argued that such a trash blade only held back the boy's potential. He offered any weapon from his collection for free as compensation. Every single piece here was hundreds of times better than that junk. Ronin kept quiet, silently staring at the two dwarves in disbelief. Looking over the replacement weapons, he realized their quality was indeed insane. Yet he wondered if a better sword would actually make a difference. He warned them that he would not be responsible if anything got destroyed. Doron laughed it off, telling the kid he did not care about damages. He only wanted to see the single greatest strike Ronin could muster. Ronin closed his eyes, remembering the devastating strike of his master. He took a slow breath and mirrored the legendary stance perfectly. Doron's eyes widened in recognition. Then Ronin unleashed the blow. It was a flawless strike, unleashing a shockwave visible from miles away. Nearby blacksmiths panicked, wondering what kind of trouble Doron was causing now. Feeling the earth shake, they assumed his massive furnace had exploded. Honestly, even Ronin stood stunned by the sheer destruction he caused. He stared at his hands, completely shocked by his own power. Doron muttered that the stance belonged to Naviros and asked if Ronin was her student. When Ronin confirmed it, the dwarf revealed he had crafted her sword. Ronin's interest piqued, remembering his instructor's absurdly massive, long blade. Doron smiled warmly, recalling that legendary masterpiece from his youth. He confessed it was one of the finest weapons he had ever created. It seemed he had vastly underestimated the young prodigy standing before him. Having someone with so much raw talent, Elder Darren noted his genius was a problem. Forging a weapon for someone that gifted was almost impossible for standard blacksmiths. The swords there simply could not withstand his strikes, leaving Ronin completely empty-handed. Darren explained he would need a wyvern byproduct to forge a proper weapon. Hearing this, Ronin pulled a strange material from his pocket and offered it. Darren found the weird eggshell highly unusual, but decided to give it a test. He was completely shocked when his high-grade mithril hammer did absolutely nothing to it. It could not even scratch the eggshell. Such a legendary material actually existed. Deeply fascinated, Darren asked if he could truly use something so incredibly valuable. Ronin insisted it was useless to him, asking if it was enough for a sword. Darren eagerly agreed, telling him to return in 2 weeks to collect his weapon. He promised to forge a masterpiece, leaving Ronin highly excited for his return. Ronin then turned to his companions, asking why they did not look for other masters. But Darren refused to send his valuable client's friends away completely empty-handed. He wanted to help, but he could only melt down the raw material. The three friends were deeply impressed by the old blacksmith's sheer determination. Nearby, a group of mysterious figures in white cloaks grew annoyed by the noise. They wanted to incinerate the whole place, but one of them held them back. He warned that it was not yet the right time to reveal their presence. It would not be long before they could purge these ignorant blacksmiths first. Visions of towering stone monsters loomed as they prepared for the coming day. And trust me, when that light arrives, this entire empire will be completely consumed. A few days later, Ronin strolled through the streets without a single care. He smiled, remembering the old blacksmith's promise to forge the greatest sword around. Both Assel and Maria had successfully placed orders with other talented blacksmiths. It was going to be pretty expensive, but the cost did not bother him. The only real issue was the long wait before his own blade was ready. With Assel and Maria busy in class, he had to find a way to kill time. Eventually, his feet led him straight to the Academy's Grand Training Center. The prestigious Galilean facility offered elite, exclusive classes for experienced veterans. He knew that instructor Nabarros held her brutal training sessions here as well. Though she demanded a real weapon, his temporary blade would have to do. As he prepared to enter, he suddenly felt her presence looming right behind him. He turned slowly to greet her, only to get his ear painfully yanked. "Just look at that," she demanded to know why he took so long to report. Accusing him of skipping class, the fierce instructor dragged him away by the ear. He tried desperately to explain his situation, but she absolutely refused to hear any of it. She barked at him to shut up and make his excuses along the way. Yelling in pain, Ronin begged her to let go as onlookers watched from above. Through a window, a curious girl watched the chaotic scene unfold with interest. Suddenly, another student rudely bumped into her, demanding to know why she blocked him. Startled, she quickly apologized, admitting she had simply gotten a bit distracted. Carden scoffed, telling the loser to get to class instead of wasting time. She quietly nodded and hurried off to class to avoid any further trouble. Inside the first dueling arena, the instructor was busy introducing Ronin to everyone. A total mess, the instructor steps up to introduce him, making it clear that he is officially part of their class from now on. Stepping forward, he introduces himself. explaining that he is a first-year martial arts student and that it is a pleasure to meet everyone. Instantly, one of the older guys asks if he is the famous top-ranked rookie. They doubt his skills immediately, whispering that he looks like a literal baby. Ronin hears every word clearly. Thankfully, some friendly faces are still around. Others not so much. Suddenly, a girl rushes in, apologizing for being late. Ronin recognizes that voice instantly. She gasps that she had some urgent business to handle, which is why she is running behind. She is incredibly anxious, bowing and apologizing. The instructor sighs and tells her it is fine, mentioning she just introduced the newcomer. The assistant jogs over, warmly welcoming Ronin. She is happy to meet him. As a second-year student, she assists this class, keeping things running smoothly. Her name is Adashin. She smiles warmly at him, but Ronin is absolutely frozen. He is looking directly at Adashin Akalushya, the future Iron Lady herself. They say she has no blood in her body, only cold iron. It is honestly mind-blowing that such a terrifying commander could smile so warmly. Obviously, she has no memories of his regression. This is her true self. In the past, she begged him with a request to stop her from doing anything stupid and let her be a tailor. He has no idea what to do. It is a massive problem, especially when he sees how she carries herself. Everyone treats her like a slave as she runs herself ragged to handle every single chore. Out of nowhere, Carden approaches Ronin, demanding a duel. Why? Carden just laughs. It is a completely spontaneous challenge, apparently. He introduces himself as Carden, a third-year student looking for some fun. He boasts about hearing how incredibly strong Ronin was during the entrance exam. If those rumors are true, he would love to test his skills. However, Ronin flatly refuses, saying he is busy. Pretending to be polite, Carden smirks, pointing out that Ronin did not even bring a weapon for their fight. Then he barks at Adashin, calling her a loser and ordering her to fetch his spear. She quickly nods, promising to bring it right away. Ronin hates hearing him talk to her like trash, especially coming from a guy who acts like an absolute animal. She runs back with the staff and hands it over. He snaps, calling her an idiot because she brought a long spear when he has been using a short one forever. He asks if she is seriously talking back, calling her a brainless assistant, and repeatedly smacks her on the head with the staff. He sneers that she does not even deserve to attend this academy, only getting in because she begged for a spot. He demands to know if she is genuinely this brainless or just pretending, even though she keeps apologizing. He never stops. Fed up, Ronin grabs the staff and glares. He tells him they will duel if that is what he wants so badly. If not, there is no telling what he might do. Carden is totally clueless. Ronin asks which part was too complicated. Staring directly into his eyes, he repeats that they are going to settle this with a duel. Carden is completely taken aback. He asks if he heard right, demanding to know what Ronin's problem is, glaring back. He asks if he is seriously starting a fight over some pathetic assistant he barely knows, mocking him. He asks if it is because they are both low-life commoners. He jeers, asking if they are secret siblings he did not know about. Suddenly, Ronin points the staff directly at him, telling him to shut up and get moving. If he doesn't want to end up dead, he just presses the cold tip right against his chest. Carden cannot understand how he wields this level of raw physical power without using any mana. Then the boy hurls him across the courtyard. He mocks him for whining about the long spear. Seeing Carden hold the two broken halves, Ronin asks if he is enjoying himself. Obviously, the proud noble hates every second of this, thinking a mere commoner is acting way too bold. In a blind rage, he screams that he will show Ronin exactly where trash belongs. Charging forward, he attacks, but Ronin just calmly watches him. Carden shrieks, asking if he thinks he will get away with this, but Ronin easily parries, slicing the weapon away, and replies that he absolutely will, telling the noble to worry about his own skin. He strikes to teach him not to show off, landing a blow squarely on his face. Followed by a barrage of brutal hits, Ronin keeps attacking relentlessly, landing blow after blow until his opponent collapses onto the ground. Staring down, Ronin tells him to be grateful they are at the academy, because anywhere else he would be dead. The surrounding crowd gasps. Carden, one of their highly ranked elites, has actually lost. Ronin is completely serious, looking around to ask who wants to go next. Then, he singles out a shameless student holding a dirty towel, staring him down. If the towel is dirty, he should wash it himself instead of making others do his chores. He asks if they think the assistant is their personal servant. Then, Ronin threatens to break his nose, but Adashin quickly steps in, begging him to stop. She stands in front, saying she doesn't know why he's doing this, but it's unnecessary. She's fine. He gently asks his assistant to step aside. He can handle ordinary daily struggles, but absolutely not when she is being openly belittled. He firmly believes that neither these arrogant fools nor anyone else in the Empire should treat her like that. Once more, he asks her to move aside. He has no plans to stop until he has beaten them all. Suddenly, Instructor Nabarros orders Ronin to freeze. She says she won't punish him for the duel, as accidents can happen in real battle, but if he continues with this behavior, she won't let it slide, ordering him to drop the weapon and step back. Instantly, she realizes her own body refuses to move and glances slightly behind. She notices a giant spectral serpent. She realizes this kid is completely unprecedented, even against a sword saint. Still, Instructor Nabarros' own aura looms like a giant serpent, warning Ronin that what he is doing is no longer a simple duel. As the teacher in charge, she cannot let this entire class spiral out of control, but Ronin counters that she must have known what her assistant was enduring this entire time, while she just stood by and did absolutely nothing. The instructor warns him one last time, ordering him to stop. He tells her it doesn't matter if she is a sword saint. His answer remains the same. Looking directly into her eyes, he vows to beat them all. She sighs, saying that in that case, he has left her with no other choice. Unleashing the serpent of torment, she traps his mind in a vivid, haunting illusion where he hears the familiar voice of his great commander. He remembers asking her why she volunteered for the commander position when everyone else refused. She answered that one day he would understand why she had to. These were things you simply could not force on anyone. She called it fate. That was how she explained her thoughts before he stood surrounded by fallen bodies. A terrifying pile of stacked people, with no idea she carried such a heavy weight. Her voice echoed in his mind, apologizing for placing this massive burden on him. She begged him never to forgive her, and then he suddenly bolted awake, screaming. He realized it was just a horrific nightmare. Then, a very familiar voice called out. The voice asked him what was wrong, wondering if he had just had a bad dream. He called out to her as the great commander, still completely dazed and confused. He stared at the assistant instructor, briefly mistaking her for that legendary grand commander. Instantly catching his mistake, he scrambled for an excuse and asked if this was the infirmary. She nodded, explaining that the head instructor had ordered her to bring him here. Apparently, the instructor wanted to beat some discipline into him during today's extra training. Hearing those words, Ronin realized he was in absolute, serious trouble. As he panicked, Adashin quietly asked him if he was somehow angry with her. He claimed he only looked upset because he was a proper gentleman, sensitive to etiquette. She gently asked him not to hate them too much, including Carden. She admitted she did not fully understand what they were going through. She just wanted him to avoid getting stressed, though she doubted her own advice. It felt strange to say, especially since she worked so tirelessly as an assistant. Ronin chose not to ask why she had volunteered for this specific class. She explained that she went easy on them, so they walked all over her. But get this, the head instructor just stood by and did absolutely nothing. Adashin quickly explained that the silent treatment was actually her own choice. She had requested it herself, prompting him to wonder why she would do something so foolish. Especially since she already believed she did not deserve her special treatment. On top of that, she was a year behind and only just beginning to control mana. Ronin found this hard to believe, remembering the legendary commander's overwhelming aura. She must have survived absolute hell to eventually acquire power like that. Adashan explained she had begged the instructor not to interfere with her. She was determined not to become a useless burden to the class. She was ready to carry that weight on her own, no matter what. She could endure it 1,000 times, but she still thanked Ronin for stepping in. She believed she was numb to the bullying, but Cardin's cruelty still stung. Ronin asked if she was pushing herself this hard just to become a great commander. Gasped in surprise, she covered her mouth and stared at him in disbelief. She sheepishly asked if her dream was really that obvious to everyone. She felt too embarrassed to brag about it, but that was her ultimate goal. She wanted to become a grand commander of the empire, despite her lack of experience. She knew people would mock her, and she heard their doubts constantly. But she refused to give up, pushing herself to the limit every single day. She pointed to her calloused hands before saying goodbye as the next class neared. She told him to get some rest and headed back to her duties. He called out to thank his senior, but she waved it off warmly. Promising they would meet again soon, she left him alone in the quiet room. He sat there in silence, staring at her empty chair, wondering what to do next. Dark thoughts flood Ronin's mind as he recalls the commander's warning. He was told to stop her from doing anything reckless, but now he is completely stuck. She wants to lead now, even though her past self begged him to prevent it. A few days pass. By the weekend, they find themselves standing right outside the Grand Carpadoki Forge. Ronin, Maria, and Assel wait at the entrance, expecting to be welcomed inside. But the place is completely deserted, if they had no intention of hosting them. Why on earth did they send an urgent message in the middle of the night? The note claimed the sword was his absolute masterpiece, ready for immediate pickup. Ronin is highly annoyed by this terrible treatment and grows increasingly impatient. He begins kicking nearby junk out of frustration, prompting Maria to whisper to Assel. She asks why Ronin is so incredibly touchy, but Assel has absolutely no clue. Ronin snaps that he is not waiting around anymore, declaring they are heading straight inside. Maria asks if they are even allowed to barge in, but Ronin shrugs it off. They invited us so we can go where we want, he says, boarding the elevator. He quickly searches for the switch to get the machine moving. Soon the trio is descending. Ronin remains furious about the absolute lack of respect. He mutters that the old blacksmith does not understand even basic customer service. The lift doors slide open, and his anger instantly turns into shock. The entire workshop is engulfed in raging flames, with victims trapped in the heat. Assel suddenly points toward a massive figure emerging through the smoke. It is a giant made of solid rock, aggressively pursuing terrified blacksmiths. Assel warns they will be crushed in seconds if they do not act now. Ronin grabs Assel, preparing to leap, and yells at Maria to find instructors immediately. He dives off the ledge with Assel, using telekinesis to break their fall. Below, the exhausted blacksmiths collapse to the floor, ready to accept their fate. But a sudden, devastating flash of light rips through the cavern, intercepting the monster. The heavy blow shatters the stone giant right before their disbelieving eyes. Ronin has been incredibly stressed lately, making this the perfect way to vent. He smirks, telling the remaining rock monsters that their little fun is over. One of the creatures responds by winding up a massive, heavy swing. As the strike looms closer, Ronin stands completely still, calculating his move. At the exact millisecond of impact, he counters with a devastating, precise slash. The beast's head is cleanly severed, crashing onto the stone floor below. A massive cloud of dust erupts, and the blacksmiths suddenly recognize their savior. It is the very same young guest who visited Darren just the other day. Standing atop the rubble, Ronin demands to know exactly what is going on. The two rescued smiths and Assel quickly gather around Ronin to explain. He listens closely and asks if an entire army of giants appeared. They nod in panic, having absolutely no idea where the monsters came from. They simply burst from deep underground, demolishing everything in sight. Almost every blacksmith, including Darren, was dragged down into the darkness. Dedekind ran after them to help, but he is hardly a capable fighter. Ronin frowns, realizing that if they do not intervene quickly, those captured will die. He confirms there are no other survivors left in this burning facility. The smith nods, pointing out they just shattered the very last beast here. He told Assel to search for survivors until Mario returned with reinforcements. If he found any wounded people, he should heal them immediately. Zeta would stay to help with the first aid, yet Assel was still terribly worried about Ronin, but Ronin promised to save the captives, adding he had to retrieve something important from Don. Meanwhile, Don was thanking Dakin for his courage. The blacksmith insisted Dakin did not need to risk his life, but Dakin urged him to flee the area immediately, but the blacksmith only cared if his invisible armor would hold up. Fuming, Dakin snapped that too much was happening and they could not waste time on nonsense if he had the strength to keep talking. Why was he not swinging his sword instead? But Don argued that he could not. The blade was his greatest masterpiece, and he refused to damage it. Given Don's terrible skills, Dakin thought he was insane. He was surely a complete weapons lunatic, but there was no time as a stone giant charged straight at them. The massive beast raised its fist high, preparing to crush them, and slammed its heavy fist straight down on Dakin. Watching the monster strike, Don panicked, fearing for his companion's life. Luckily, Dakin was stronger than he looked and managed to withstand the crushing blow delivered by the massive stone giant without taking any severe damage. However, the defensive enchantment on his armor was completely drained, and the beast prepared to strike again. Dakin realized that if he was about to die, he should have lived more freely. He had endless regrets. Just as the giant swung to end Dakin's life, wait for it, he was sliced into pieces by Ronin's sharp blade. Ronin calmly told Dakin he did a great job, but he could leave the rest to him and rest. Right in front of them stood several massive stone giants, but Ronin did not care. He positioned himself protectively in front of his allies. In shock, Dakin asked how he arrived so fast since there were monsters blocking the path. Ronin replied that he had cleared them all out and saved the other blacksmiths. Stunned, Dakin muttered that was totally impossible. Ronin told them to stop wasting time on useless chatter, then asked Don to hand over the sword. If that masterpiece was ready, he wanted to give the weapon to him. Don seemed rather obsessed with his incomplete creation, but he handed it over, mentioning that the hilt was still completely missing. It was highly incomplete, but still perfectly usable. Ronin was eager to test its true power. To test it and those nearby stone giants were perfect target practice. Watch closely as one of them lunged forward, stretching its massive arm to grab him. Ronin casually wondered if he should give the blade a light swing. Ultimately, he swung and unleashed a massive wave of energy, obliterating all of the stone giants in one single blow. The raw force left both of the blacksmiths completely awestruck. Dakin asked what kind of magical weapon that was. Don proudly asked his thoughts on Lancia, explaining that was its name. Inspired by a famous legend, he was thrilled to have crafted such a wonderful masterpiece. Ronin noted how incredibly light the sword felt, barely feeling any weight at all. Don explained he had not placed any enchantments. Yet as it naturally repaired itself by absorbing blood, he believed this was due to the rare ribbon eggshell used to forge it. Ronin looked at the talented blacksmith, praising him for being even more amazing than expected. Don beamed knowing Ronin loved the weapon. Still, Dakin urged them to leave immediately, warning that they were the only survivors left, meaning there was no one else to rescue. Ronin urged his companion to take Dawn and escape while he investigated a strange hunch. He claimed it was probably nothing, but he suspected a rat was lurking nearby, a massive one. Dedekind demanded to know what that meant. Ronin just replied that things felt entirely wrong. He understood how giants behaved, and they were never known for being hostile. Ronin checked behind their heads. Daron and Dakin watched in complete silence. Deep inside, he found a highly suspicious mark, a magic circle. He immediately asked Dawn if the symbol looked familiar, but Dawn shook his head. Though no magic expert, Dawn could feel the incredibly precise resonance of the active mana. That powerful spell was exactly what drove the stone beast into a mindless, destructive rage. Dawn wondered who could commit such an atrocity. Ronin did not have an answer yet. Tracking down the culprit was their top priority. Ronin took off, racing ahead into the dark underground tunnels. Initially, he hesitated, unsure if he had chosen the correct path, but each step down made him more confident. Among the giant heavy footprints, he spotted smaller tracks, human footprints. Someone had guided them. A sophisticated magical security network lay ahead. These intruders had plotted everything perfectly. Suddenly, Ronin froze. He heard muffled voices echoing from deep inside. He quickly slipped into the darkness to listen closely. That was when he saw an unbelievable sight. A colossus loomed before him, dwarfing any monster he had ever faced. Seeing two figures standing calmly before the towering beast, Ronin immediately knew they were behind the entire plot. He just needed to figure out their ultimate goal. The previous stone monsters were mere playthings compared to this absolute gargantuan titan. It looked dormant yet completely ready to move. Then Ronin was spotted. The two conspirators noted that the mental control spell on the giants had broken. The woman frowned, asking if some meddling outsider had managed to sever their magic. The man spat back that the Empire forces were moving far too quickly for them. Without a giant sovereign in their grasp, controlling this massive weapon was proving impossible. Frustrated, he growled that since their plans were ruined, he would handle the execution himself. The woman addressed him as Edwin, pointing out he had already demolished most facilities. This sabotage would severely cripple the Empire's ability to maintain their heavy arms. But if their names leaked, the Empire would tear them apart. She urged him to fall back now. The man sighed, calling Cyrilla far too cautious. With no other option left, they began talking about destroying their giant creation entirely. Cyrilla shrugged, letting him make the call. That was when Ronin heard them discuss eliminating the rat hiding in the shadows. Instantly, Ronin felt intense, crackling heat. Edwin declared he was sick of hiding and unleashed a massive fire blast toward Ronin. The blazing explosion tore through the cavern, engulfing the area in thick, roaring flames. They watched the smoke unfazed. Edwin demanded to know his identity, noting that Ronin actually managed to withstand the direct hit. The villain then began summoning more fire. Mocking him about burning his legs off, Ronin grimaced, completely shocked by this power. The speed at which they conjured high-level magic was absolutely unreal. This opponent was a monster. Edwin demanded to know how Ronin bypassed their complex security perimeter. Ronin stood his ground, demanding their names instead. He noted that their hiding spot was pretty extreme just for some secrets. Edwin smirked, saying he loved killing comedians. While Cyrilla prepared her next move, the final showdown was about to begin. He grumbled that they were running out of time, begging Cyrilla to let him have some quick fun before the Empire was completely buried under the starlight. Hearing those exact words, Ronin suddenly remembered what the giant from his past life had said. He confronted the man, demanding to know why he had used those specific words. Furious, Ronin demanded if they even understood the dark meaning behind them, which puzzled Edwin. Edwin found this sudden shift strange. Ronin then declared they were coming with him. He had far too many questions. Naturally, Edwin completely underestimated the young warrior's actual strength. He sneered, calling the kid insane for thinking he could actually capture them. Summoning a blazing fireball, he mocked the brat, asking if he really stood a chance. But Ronin was already there, slicing his arm off with a cold yes. "It is entirely possible," he whispered, "so shut up. It all happened in a flash." Seeing him crawl on the dirt for his arm, while Cyrilla froze, is honestly insane. She was stunned because even Edwin could not react. She quickly raised her hands to cast magic. But his hand already locked around her neck. Ronin spoke calmly. He politely suggested that the lady answer his upcoming questions with absolute honesty. Staring straight into her eyes, he warned her not to end up like her crippled friend. With that cold warning, his grip tightened around her throat, cutting off her breath completely. She only managed to break free by deploying a powerful mana shield that pushed him back. He sighed, asking if she truly refused to cooperate. Then, he gently tapped her protective barrier. "It is quite sturdy," he remarked, "but not nearly enough." With a swing, he sliced it. She stared in absolute disbelief, wondering how anyone could easily slice through her magical defense. As the shield shattered, his blade pierced her right chest, just avoiding her heart. Realizing she was a half-elf, he was disappointed she allied with him. Suddenly, a strange energy gathered nearby. Before he could react, a massive explosion erupted. Spinning around to face the blast, he kept his foot firmly planted on the half-elf. With a swift, powerful stroke of his sword, he easily parted the oncoming flames. It was bizarre. Why was this strange flame giant still attacking after losing its limbs? He then watched in surprise as new limbs sprouted instantly from the stump he cut. This creature was clearly something far from normal. Its rapid regeneration made no sense. Edwin roared, ordering him to get away from her. The flame monster glared with fury. Despite the heavy threats from the burning giant, Ronin kept pinning the bleeding half-elf down. He coldly told the creature that it clearly did not comprehend the actual situation here. Without hesitation, he drove his blade deeper into the girl, driving Edwin into a frenzy. Ronin looked up, warning him they were in serious trouble now. He gave him a choice: listen quietly, or watch the half-elf lose her limbs one by one. He mockingly wondered if her arms would grow back as easily as the giant's did. Defeated, Edwin agreed to cooperate. Smiling, Ronin slowly pulled his bloodied sword from her leg. He claimed he had no actual desire to cause any more unnecessary harm to them. It would be incredibly troublesome if one of his hostages died right here. Yet looking down at Cyrilla, she was actually smiling. He wondered what was wrong with her. Before he could figure it out, a massive shadow loomed directly behind him. The colossal giant was preparing to strike. This time, Ronin was caught completely off guard. Unsure how it broke the seal, he still barely avoided the massive initial strike. The sheer shockwave blasted him backward, filling the entire area with blinding dust and rubble. The force of the giant's assault was absolutely devastating, leaving no room for escape. She thought they had actually finished him. Cyrilla admitted she owed Edwin big time. If he had not distracted him during her attack, she would be dead. There was zero time to weave her sensory magic or activate that massive giant. They kept talking while she sat there bleeding from several nasty wounds. Edwin stood tall, surrounded by the absolute wreckage of her giant. Even with just one working arm, she knew the damage was severe. The warrior promised to finish the brat while she ran back to report. "Go report everything to the church," she warned, begging him to stay careful. To her, Ronin was a monster wearing a child's face. Edwin knew better. "Leave him alive and trust me, he is going to make them pay." Ronin did not care about their chatter. He just started swinging his blade. He hacked away, aiming to shred Edwin into tiny, unrecognizable pieces. Done with the butchery, he coldly asked Cyrilla where she was running off to. "Pretty sure I already told you," he muttered, locking his eyes on her. He had questions. She stared, shocked he could even speak while bleeding out. Panic setting in, she desperately threw up a defense barrier to block him. No more games. He vowed he would never let her kind finish speaking. But get this, suddenly, her magic begins to take hold. His muscles locked up. He could not force his own body to move. Cyrilla scoffed in frustration. No easy win today, but escaping to report was enough. Getting back with the news was her top priority now. Looking down at the paralyzed boy, she sneered and told him to get ready. She promised to tear his entire life apart, digging up every secret he kept. His home, his loved ones, she would strip away every single thing. He panicked. If she got away, he would end up entirely alone again. The desperate urge to stop her consumed him, but his body refused to move. With one final, ragged breath, he screamed, "Stop!" A sudden pressure hit the air. A cold voice ordered her to freeze. "I have a few questions myself," it said. Ronin knew that voice instantly. The newcomer stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" she demanded, "and how dare you lay a finger on my disciple?" Instructor Nabarose turned to Ronin, softly noting that she knew the situation. "You did well," she said. He silently thanked the gods for her perfect timing. "Nice to see you alive," she remarked dryly, seeing him still trying to flatter her. But jokes aside, she told him to rest while she handled these fools. Her eyes shifted to Cyrilla, instantly turning the air around them to ice. Cyrilla felt it. A terrifying, snake-like pressure was wrapping around her entire body. She tried to flee, but before she could twitch, a hand clamped down. Nabarose gripped her face like a vice, growling that she had crossed the line. "Hurt my student," she whispered, "and you will pay 1,000 times over. Prepare yourself," she warned, "because your future is going to be hell." With brutal force, she slammed Cyrilla's face directly into her coiled mana snake. Cyrilla offered one final, silent apology to the heavens before blacking out completely. The instructor sighed, telling Ronin they would report to the headmaster next. Ronin looked up, asking if that future meant she was heading to Leland. She simply nodded. That dark prison was exactly where the woman was going. Nabarose asked how Ronin knew so much about the fortress, wondering what his motive was. Just as expected, it was Lalan, the Fortress of Screams, a prison in the middle of the ocean, notorious for interrogating criminals who dared oppose the Empire with brutal methods. Ronin asked Nabarose if he could accompany the interrogation, which she found incredibly strange and questioned. She insisted it was no place for him, but Ronin gripped her arm tight and pleaded to go just once, insisting this was a deeply important matter to him. She stared back in silence. Meanwhile, the wounded from that recent disaster were receiving urgent first aid, with several people heavily injured. Some of the elderly had minor injuries, but thankfully, everyone was finally safe. Maria and Assel stayed behind to tend to as many people as they could. Assel was deeply worried about Ronin, hoping he would return safely. He feared something went wrong, but right as they spoke of him, he suddenly appeared. Maria, Assel, and little Seta were just discussing him. Ronin explained he had heard a summary on his way back, praising their incredible efforts. He heard that while Maria brought reinforcements, Assel and Seta had saved over half the blacksmiths, before gently asking if they were hurt. Maria countered that they should be asking him that instead. Assel and Seta urged him to get treated, but he replied he already got basic care. Now his focus shifted to the larger threat looming over them. He absolutely had to squeeze information out of the captured prisoners. Now the real quest begins. A few hours later, they took the secret path toward Lalan. They stood on a cliff overlooking Gregno Forest, Nabarose, Ronin, and the captives. Nabarose quietly announced their arrival as the Lalan escort descended. They rode on massive birds of prey, offering their polite greetings. Addressing Nabarose, they confirmed the imperial order to interrogate the target. Glancing at the two captives bound on the dirt, they asked for confirmation. Nabarose warned them about the man's terrifyingly fast regeneration. She urged caution, but the interrogator smiled. It had been a long time since he had such an entertaining subject to break. They prepared to depart, promising to send word once they finished. He told her to keep serving the Empire's peace well, then they flew away. Nabarose watched them soar away with the prisoners, noting a week should suffice. She promised to contact Ronin the moment those prisoners' mouths finally opened up. He needed to be ready to move at any second, asking if that worked. Ronin nodded. He thanked Nabarros for the massive favor she did. Time flew. Cappadocia's reconstruction moved ahead rapidly. Backed by Imperial support, Ronin returned home, attending to minor duties. Meanwhile, deep within the Lalan fortress of Screams, a chilling scene unfolded. Pure agony, screams echoed endlessly through the dark stone corridors. Inside a heavily locked chamber, the brutal torture was underway. The interrogator laughed, losing track of time because he was having so much fun. He nearly forgot their scheduled guests were arriving at the prison. A gaunt man welcomed Nabarros and Ronin, introducing himself as the lead interrogator. He warmly offered them a full tour of the facilities, politely asking if they were ready. First, they wanted to see the criminal. The instructor agreed, saying they needed the interrogation details immediately, so she led the way. But as they walked down, Ronin got a very strange feeling about the old man. This interrogator from Loylan, Ronin, simply did not trust him at all. The instructor laughed, saying everyone reacts exactly like that on their first meeting. But he would soon find out why they called this creepy old guy his worst nightmare. Since the cell was close, she decided to give him a quick rundown first. Yes, there was absolutely no doubt about it. The name of the organization was Nebula Clossier. Ronin asked her if they were a dark, criminal syndicate similar to Calibaro. She nodded in agreement, though admitting they still had no real clue who they were. But she pointed out several mysterious fires, proving just how dangerous they are. Still, Ronin had serious doubts about how important this syndicate actually was. After all, he had never even heard of them a single time during his entire past life. The instructor promised to hand over the full written reports once they arrived. Entering the cold cell, Ronin asked if they had ever used the specific term Star's Advent. The old interrogator shook his head, admitting he had never heard of those terms. Instantly, both the instructor and the creepy old man turned and stared directly at Ronin. He quickly explained he had overheard those words during the enemy's capture. It seemed like their main objective, so had they really not mentioned it? When Ronin put on his special mask, he noticed a truly bizarre, hazy dark aura swirling. That hazy mist clearly exposed major flaws in the old man's interrogation technique. The interrogator looked deeply embarrassed. He had not been entirely sincere with them. He was forced to work much harder, while Ronin stared at the prisoners in disbelief. They were indeed the exact same fearsome people he had faced just a day earlier. Walking alongside the instructor, he began explaining how they could easily get closer to Edwin, and it was far simpler than anyone could have guessed. They simply had to ensure his body could no longer regenerate, pouring everything into that. Once they did, they would practically become best friends, or so the old man believed, though Ronin strongly suspected that the prisoner was still hiding massive secrets. The interrogator faced Edwin, reminding him they agreed to be completely honest. He demanded to know why the very first mention of Star's advent did not come from him. The boy actually tried to speak, but some strange force physically blocked him. The old man warned him to talk, pointing out that Miss Cyrilla did not possess any regeneration, and they had been together through this entire ordeal. So if the old man decided to press a bit harder, she would not survive. Ronin realized he had never witnessed anything like this, not even as a soldier. But he quickly realized that concealing crucial information was still possible under extreme duress. Even when their entire identity had already been completely blown open, maybe. Then it hit him they were not actually choosing to stay silent, they literally could not. Ronin explained he knew the exact mental blocks used to keep soldiers quiet. This was likely their case. The old interrogator actually looked quite embarrassed, because he had not thought of such an obvious possibility himself. He asked them to wait in the room because he needed to go grab something. There was a specific item he absolutely needed to retrieve for this. Minutes later, he came back holding a few incredibly strange-looking tools. They looked like creepy eyes, monsters known as cursed eyes that existed solely to consume curses. Interrogators used them on tight-lipped criminals, silent ones bound by spells. He pointed at Edwin. "Get to work," he commanded. The interrogator whispered to the creature, placing it on Edwin's forehead. "Start whenever you want, just do it," he muttered, promising freedom. Extracting the truth was tough. Edwin resisted with everything he had. But the cursed eye ended up winning, breaking his mind. With the seal fully devoured, Edwin was finally ready to talk. They asked about the advent of the star. He babbled about an eternal entity. A holy grace meant to save all lower creatures on Earth. His fanatical group was just waiting for its grand descent to begin in the sky. They worked to ensure nothing interfered with their sacred mission. The interrogator sighed. That was way too long. He demanded a simplified answer. He asked directly if something was about to fall from the sky. With the curse completely gone, the prisoner had nowhere left to hide. "It is the child of the stars," Edwin confessed, and Ronin's eyes suddenly widened. Listening from the shadows, Ronin understood everything. He was talking about the Ayut, the ultimate threat. But Ronin completely ignored the warning, stepping right up to stare directly at Edwin. He demanded to know if this child of the stars was actually the Ayut. Edwin gasped, shocked that this boy possessed such classified information. Suddenly, the cultist's face warped and shifted. "Step back," the interrogator yelled, quickly casting a massive protective shield. Edwin looked ready to explode, and get this, he actually did. The interrogator's barrier was their only protection. Even though the eye removed the curse, they never expected a fatal backlash. Ronin asked if this happened often, but he shook his head. This was highly unusual. The curse was likely cast in two parts. The first part was designed to prevent anyone from revealing secrets about the star. A second trigger would detonate the spell if specific words were mentioned. Simply uttering those classified terms would instantly set off the blast. The interrogator placed his hand on Ronin's shoulder, demanding to know what the Ayut was. If Ronin was right, that was highly classified information. He stared intently at the boy, demanding a clear, honest explanation. As the lead investigator on this case, he needed Ronin to answer. Ronin shrugged it off, claiming he just learned about it by coincidence. He explained that since he was the first to find the target, he overheard it. The boy claimed he just caught the word while hiding. At first he didn't think much of it, but arriving here changed things. He realized it was a significant word. He got excited. Ronin apologized for interfering, brushing the interrogator's hand away. He calmly asked if that explanation was convincing enough. The interrogator remained highly skeptical. He was absolutely certain Ronin was hiding something big. But staring into those eyes, he saw an unbreakable resolve. He analyzed the gaze until he discovered its root, a deep, burning hatred against those exact people. Meanwhile, the instructor noticed the interrogator's intense interest. In her student, Ronin, she quickly unleashed a terrifying, lightning-fast warning strike and demanded he immediately stop. Calling him out as Karaka, furious, she asked if he was daring to interrogate her. Disciple right in front of her face, Karaka quickly claimed he was not questioning him, but was simply verifying. Keeping a casual tone, he argued it was better to be safe and immediately apologized to the Sword Saint's disciple. They realized how dangerous it was that the creepy old man wanted to interrogate him too. Still, the interrogator felt highly frustrated about losing a cursed eye. They were incredibly rare. To find, the instructor asked if those eyes were actually that powerful, calling them almost cute. With a smirk, the interrogator asked if Ronin wanted to touch the cursed eye himself, but when the creepy old man glanced down, he suddenly realized the eye had completely transformed. It had absorbed a curse, yet it had not even approached Miss Cirilla. He then looked at Ronin, instructing him to activate his mana shield before touching. His shoulder, though only for a split second, pulling that disgusting, cursed eye away, he called out to Ronin directly. He slapped the cursed eyeball right onto Ronin's arm and